Aaron Rodgers is looking for revenge in week 1 of 2025 as he returns to the Meadowlands to take on his former team in the Jets. Plus, the Green Bay Packers and Detroit Lions face off in what could be the top 2 teams in the NFC North this season. The Ultimate NFL Pregame Show starts right now.
It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Every team, every game, every angle. The local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network going head-to-head on every matchup. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Unprecedented insight, unrivaled passion, and unsurpassed knowledge. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. The Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Week 1 of the NFL season is officially here, and we've got everything you need to know heading into the weekend from the local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome in. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher. I host the Locked On Ravens podcast, and I'm one of the many NFL experts on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, from the primetime game of the Bills and the Ravens to the big 4 o'clock matchup between the Packers and the Lions, to why that Jets and Steelers game really does matter this week. We're going to go game by game to make you the most informed fan for game day. And of course, first, we have so much to dive into, including a great slate of 1 p.m. games, starting off with the New York Jets and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Aaron Rodgers is the storyline here. He returns to the Meadowlands to face off against his former team as a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were looking to make some noise under Mike Tomlin. So Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers and John Butchko of Locked On Jets get you ready for the game.
It is Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets, alongside Chris Carter, the host of Locked On Steelers. Jets and Steelers open the 2025 regular season. I think I can speak for Chris when I say I'm excited to have the offseason finally behind us. It's been a really long time since we've seen these teams play for real. Chris, give me your keys to victory for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well, one key is they have to be able to stop the run in this game. That was one of the key elements that they talked about being better at the end of last season. When they faced the Ravens in the playoffs, the Ravens almost got 300 rushing yards on them, which was just obscene for the Steelers because they were one of the NFL's better run defenses last year. But to answer that, they replenished the defensive line. They got rid of guys like Larry Ogunjobi. They drafted Derek Harmon, who won't play in this game. He's dealing with a knee injury. But they've drafted a guy in Y.A. Black, a 5th rounder, but a guy who has been very impressive in training camp, and I think we'll get tons of snaps in this game. They brought in Dan Aquale from the Patriots. They've brought in guys there, and I think their big thing is, especially when it comes to running quarterbacks and their chances to use QB options, they have to take on double teams better than they did against the Ravens last year. And so that's going to be a key matchup that I think is going to be huge on both sides. Can the Jets win their double teams, get the Steelers interior linemen off the ball, and can they chip to the Steelers backers? Because if Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson, the Steelers inside linebackers that'll be starting in this game, if they're not able to get clean looks, it's going to open up more space for Breece Hall and Justin Fields to run QB options, to get loose, to hit their holes, and to start setting a good tone with the run game. But if they're left clean, those are 2 athletic linebackers who will jump into the backfield and bring you down quick, fast, and in a hurry. So I want to see, can the Steelers' run defense show that they're able to do things that they weren't doing late last year that ended their season? That's going to be a big matchup and a big key for the Steelers to achieve. What's one key for you, John?
Do not let TJ Watt destroy this game. Last year when these teams played in October, it was an ugly night for the New York Jets. These teams played on Sunday Night Football. Jets got off to a good start in the game. They actually were up 15-6 late in the first half. A Rodgers interception right before halftime kind of turned it around. Steelers turned that into points. But one of the few things that went right for the Jets that night was they held TJ Watt in check. Todd Downing, who was then their offensive coordinator, had an expression, 4 hands on every play. They were double teaming him practically every play. Armand Membou, as we discussed earlier, is making his first NFL start. And I think Membou's got a ton of potential. I think he's going to be a very good tackle in this league, but he showed in preseason that there is some work that needs to be done on his technique. He's not a finished product yet. And going up against a guy like TJ Watt when you're not a finished product is dangerous. I mean, I'll just say it. I said it the other day on my show. If TJ Watt gets one-on-one against Armand Membou, TJ Watt's going to win. He's going to dominate. So the Jets need to give Membou plenty of help, because if they don't, TJ Watt will destroy this game for the New York Jets. Chris, do you have another key?
Absolutely. I'll flip it to the other side of the lines, and that's the Steelers' offensive line against Quinnen Williams and that defensive front, because the Steelers' offensive line, like the Jets, is young. They have a first-round pick in Broderick Jones in his third year. Troy Faltano, first-round pick in his second year. Zach Frazier at center, a second-round pick in his second year. Mason McCormick, fourth-round pick in his second year. You throw in a veteran like Isaac Seumalo, who's been around the league several years now. But that's a group that they've shown a better collective effort in the pass protection game throughout training camp, throughout the preseason, and that's going to be huge. But they're also going to show that ability in the run game, and that's not something the Steelers really tested out too much in the preseason. When I asked Arthur Smith, the Steelers offensive coordinator, about that, he said, "Hey, we got some things dialed up that we think we're excited to show." And I think the part of this is the Steelers didn't want to show their hand. They want teams to kind of guess what the Steelers are going to come at you with, and I think part of that is how they're going to run the football. Now, the Steelers, I think, want to be a wide zone team with the skill set that they have in the fast Jaylen Warren, who got signed to an extension this week. And I think that's something that they want to do. But I also see that this team, one thing Arthur Smith boasts about, he said this is the most athletic offensive line in football. He says that, from left tackle to right tackle, every single position on the Steelers offensive line can pull and effectively hit in space. And so my big thing for the Steelers will be, can you contain Quinnen Williams? Can you get after those linebackers? And can you set a tone where the run game gets going? And then off of that, you can start to build that passing rhythm and so on and so forth.
My key for the Jets might be a little counterintuitive, but I think the Jets need to make big plays in the passing game in this one. Jets are going to be a run team. They're probably one of the heaviest run teams in the league, but everybody knows that. And I think going into week one, the Steelers' game plan is likely to be focused on taking away the run. And the Steelers, I think, have a pretty good run defense to begin with. A lot of talented players up front, at least. I've said on Locked On Jets that I think the Jets might want to come out throwing the football, because I do think that there are going to be some opportunities early in the game. The other aspect of this game is that it's week one, which means you've had extra time to kind of perfect your scripts. You've had extra time to really prepare the plays that you're going to run early in the game and try and get them to a point where you're running them to perfection. This is an opportunity you won't have most weeks. So everybody knows the Jets are going to have to run the ball effectively to win, but I think in this game they have to produce big splash plays in the passing game. Do you have one more clue, Chris? One more clue, Chris.
I'm going to be intrigued by this. I think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers versus the Jets' middle of the field. Like we talked about, Aaron Rodgers is excited to do that. And that's something that's not just a new phenomenon. I was watching that all throughout training camp, the Steelers attacking the middle part of the field, not just with their tight ends, but with shallow under routes where you get like a shallow cross from a Calvin Austin who runs a sub 4.4 40-yard dash. Same thing for Roman Wilson. And then occasionally they'll run deeper routes, but then when they do that, they open up space for the tight ends. The Steelers are going to run layered concepts that attack the middle part of the field that force Andre Cisco and the Jets safeties, as well as the Jets linebackers, to have to read, communicate, and attack at the right times. And if they bite at the wrong moments, Aaron Rodgers, can he attack them, force them, manipulate the defense a little bit, and get some openings there? That's going to be a huge part of this game. I think this year, while the Steelers' offensive line is young and is forming, I think that there's going to be a concerted effort to pass to set up the run, especially early on this year. And if the Jets aren't able to slow down a middle of the field passing attack that gives the Steelers options like Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, maybe even DK Metcalf, but other guys over the middle, and that allows them to move the ball, that's going to set the stage for the Jets to be worried about, okay, what concept's coming next? And all of a sudden, the Steelers are running their wide zone at you, and you're a step behind because you're worrying about the pass game. I think that's why it's got to be huge for Aaron Rodgers to set that up in this game. He talked about how he feels like he has the best tight end room he's ever had in his NFL career. I think he's excited for it. And when I talk to guys like even Scotty Miller, the team's fourth wide receiver, he was like, listen, Aaron Rodgers is that guy. He's the guy that can make people go where he wants them to go on defense because he knows how to manipulate you and he studies you. And I think that's where the Steelers have to get another big win for this game. What say you for your key?
I think it's the Jets defenders need to disrupt the Steelers receivers early in their routes, because one thing we saw in New York, and it goes back to his Green Bay days, Rodgers is very demanding on his receivers. He wants his receivers to run very precise routes. He wants them to be at a certain spot at a certain time. And that actually created problems with Garrett Wilson, because Garrett Wilson's a guy who kind of freelances on his routes. He gets open, but Garrett Wilson kind of like wants to have a little bit of freedom the way he runs routes. First game with new receivers, it sounds like they've done a pretty good job getting on the same page in training camp. But when the first real game comes, that's the test. I think the Jets want to make sure they're disruptive. That you use your ability to contact the receivers in the first 5 yards, try and throw those guys off their routes, and maybe throw off Rodgers' internal clock a little bit. Chris, do you have a prediction for this game? We don't necessarily need to predict the final score, but do you have a prediction for this one?
I think, like you hinted at during our FanDuel read, I think this game is closer to the under in when it comes to how it scores. I won't give my final prediction, but I do think that this is a close defensive game where both teams' defenses get after it. The both teams try to run the ball unsuccessfully a lot in this game, and then it's going to come down to which quarterback can make the smarter decision late in a big moment. And I think that's going to be a tough thing to balance, but we'll see as it moves forward. But I do think this game is not a cakewalk for either side. I think that both teams have invested a lot in their trenches to be good there, and I'm eager to see which team wins out on those trenches to set the tone for the game.
I'm with you. I'm going the under here. I think that both of these teams, new quarterbacks, lots of new aspects of this offense, of these offenses, and just the general week one vibe where you see it in the NFL now across the league, where because I think maybe it's just like training camps aren't as intense as they used to be. Maybe it's like teams don't really play their starters all that much in the exhibition season. Offenses tend to not be very crisp in week one. And I think this makes the game really tough to predict, because week one has a lot of like really random events that happened. Mm-hmm. I mean, in the 6 Brady Belichick Super Bowls, they lost week one 3 of those years. So it's really tough to make a prediction, but I do think the under is going to hold. I think that these teams, I think it's going to be a defensive struggle, and I think it may come down to the classic, who wins the special teams battle, who avoids turnovers. That could be the decisive factor.
For more on Chris and for more on John, be sure to check him out over at the Locked On Steelers and Locked On Jets podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, we have what's probably a preview of the top 2 teams in the NFC South this season. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers open their season on the road in Atlanta against the Falcons. And obviously the storylines, Baker Mayfield versus Michael Penix, and there are a lot of other ones as well. So Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons and James Yarko of Locked On Bucks dive through all the storylines you need to know.
So wrapping up today's Crossover Thursday presented by PrizePicks, Aaron Freeman here of Locked On Falcons, James Yarko, Locked On Bucks. And James, let's get into some of these keys to victory. I have 3 for the Atlanta Falcons. And it's funny, James, because I was sitting here sort of contemplating what are going to be the keys to victory. And I didn't want to necessarily come up with the same generic ones that we always come up with when it comes to, you got to, stop the run or establish the run, or you got to get turnovers or whatever. And so I went back and listened to our crossovers from last year, and I came up with the same generic ones. And I'm just like, look, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is the reason why these are all cliches when it comes to how and why teams win football games. And so for me, my 3 are the Falcons getting off to a fast start, pressuring the quarterback, and winning the turnover battle. The Falcons did not have any opening drive touchdowns under Michael Penix in his 3 starts. And oftentimes in all 3 of those starts, they really didn't get their offense into a groove, at least the passing game, until like midway through the second quarter. And the Falcons have been very public with the way that they've built their team, which is they've built their team to play with a bunch of leads. And in order to get a lead, you got to score some points early in the game, right? So I think that's going to be a key. And then when you talk about building to play with leads, because the Falcons have invested heavy resources in their pass rush, and there's still concerns about their run defense heading into the season. But they think with all this young talent and all this young speed at edge rusher now, in addition to Leonard Floyd, drafting Jalen Walker, drafting James Pierce, Leonard Floyd, Arnold Ebiketie, among others, that they can get after the quarterback. And as we just recently discussed, the Bucs have some firepower. And basically, if you can prevent the best way to prevent Buka and Evans from creating problems is, Baker Mayfield can't complete passes if he's on his backside. So if they can get after the quarterback, that will be key. And then winning the turnover battle, you already mentioned it with Antoine Winfield's success against the Bucks, against the Falcons. The Falcons have a safety that has a lot of success against the Bucks, and Jesse Bates. Both of these guys are probably going to each create at least one turnover in this game based off of recent matchups. They always seem to be in the right place or the wrong place, depending on your perspective, at the right or wrong time. And because this has the potential to be a high-scoring affair like we saw in both matchups last year, one turnover could potentially swing a game. And so it'll be interesting to sort of see which of these two safeties or other players on either side of the defense can make that sort of game-changing play in terms of the turnover. For you, what are some of the keys that you're looking at for the Bucs to be able to walk away with a win?
Oh, I mean, like you, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Look, offensively, protect Baker against this revamped Falcons pass rush when you don't have Tristan Wirfs there protecting the blind side, and create takeaways. So last year in the two games, Baker had 3 turnovers against the Falcons, and he was sacked just once. That pass rush is going to be even more difficult to face this year with the additions of Pierce and Walker. And as you said, they're going to have a conveyor belt, just a constant rotation of fresh bodies out there trying to get after him and beat up on Charlie Heck. The Bucs, of course, missing their left tackle. On the flip side, the Bucs had just 1 takeaway against the Falcons last season. So losing the turnover battle 3-1 in 2 games is already handicapping yourself. Todd Bowles said all offseason he wants ball hawks at all 3 levels of the defense. In preseason, the Bucs answered that call by leading the NFL in interceptions over those 3 games. This isn't preseason anymore, so you have to figure out a way to continue that momentum and get big plays from your players, whether that's a tipped pass that somebody can get underneath, or creating a fumble, or just getting your hands on the football. If you are going to give yourselves a chance, excuse me, if you're going to give yourselves a chance to win a big road divisional game to open the season, short-handed takeaways are the reason. And I would say that I can't give an advantage to the Bucs defense because the Falcons are kind of in the same boat, but Baker Mayfield was talking to the media on Wednesday, and he said that this game is particularly tough because Zach Robinson's offense is similar to the one that Liam Cohen and Josh Grizzard have installed in Tampa. And so because of that, it's all going to come down to the little things. Both of these defenses know how both of these offenses are going to operate because both of these offenses operate the same way.
Uh-huh. And James, I really appreciate you for once on a crossover, someone coming on a podcast and saying, I'm worried about the Falcons pass rush. I've never heard that. I've been doing crossovers
there hasn't been a reason to until now.
Yes, I know, for over 8 years. And no one's ever said that before on a crossover. So I appreciate you being the very first to say so.
And to be fair, I don't know if I'll say it the next time. I probably would not have said it if Tristan was playing.
Probably. But we'll take what we can get here in Atlanta. So, talking about this game, and we've already sort of laid out sort of what each team needs to do in order to win. James, I'll give you the floor. Do you feel like the Bucs will do what it takes to walk away with a win this weekend?
Well, we did the divisional preview episode with Ross and Julian, and all 4 of us were together. And when we got done, I told you, I said, spoiler alert, Aaron, I'm going to pick the Falcons to win this game because Baker is not going to touch the field in preseason. And then you were like, but James, Michael Penix isn't touching the field in preseason either. And then the right tackle issues happened. And then Darnell Mooney happened. And I'm like, all right, Bucs are going to win this game. They're going to go out on the road without Godwin, without McMillan, without Wirfs. They're going to win this game. I think I'll throw it out there. I think this ends up being the best game of the week. These teams know each other so well. They're evenly matched. I think this has the opportunity to be the most entertaining game that we get in week 1. And just like both games last year, this one's coming down to the wire. So whoever has the ball last is going to win.
Yes. I feel like that's going to be most Falcons and Bucks games this upcoming season, where it's just
Yeah.
going to be like, yeah, last 5 minutes we'll have a better idea who's going to win this game, but it's all, build up to that. But for that same reason, I'm a believer that the Falcons will come away with the victory because they'll make the plays in the final 5 minutes that they need to make, as they did both times last year. And I feel like even though Michael Penix gets off to slow starts in his 3 previous starts, he usually finishes very strong. And so that gives me the optimism that I think the Falcons will walk away with a victory in week 1. So we will see what each of these teams do week 1. I agree with you, James. I think this has the potential to be one of the high-flying, high-scoring, most entertaining games of the week 1 matchup.
Be sure you support and check out Aaron over at Locked On Falcons and, of course, James over at Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The battle for Ohio is where we head next. Cleveland is where we land. The Cincinnati Bengals and Cleveland Browns face off in week 1. The Bengals, notoriously slow starters in the early portion of the season, and the Browns are dealing with a laundry list of injuries. Of course, starting Joe Flacco over rookie Shedeur Sanders and rookie Dylan Gabriel. James Rapien of Locked On Bengals and Spencer German of Locked On Browns talk about everything you need to know.
All right, James, let's talk about some paths to victory for both these teams. We know, as we talked about, the Bengals tend to get off to slow starts, but they're trying to do things a little bit differently this year. Some questions about the defense, but what do you think it's going to take for the Bengals to do what everyone expects them to do and, not be upset by this Cleveland Browns team in week 1?
Starting fast may be a theme of the season, but it's also a theme of the game. The last thing you want is that Cleveland Browns crowd to get into it, that defense to get into it. Getting a lead early is huge. When the Browns have blown out the Bengals and given Joe Burrow trouble, they've jumped out early and they've made life tough because then they know Joe is passing because they got to try to get back in the game, right? So that is a huge key, starting fast. 2, it's, of course, keeping Joe Burrow upright. You keep Joe Burrow upright, you're going to have a chance against any team in the NFL. And so not letting Myles Garrett and Malik Collins and Mason Graham, especially Mason, you can't let this rookie come in and have splash plays on you right away. You expect some of those from Myles Garrett, but limit them. And then 3, you mentioned the defense. The defense show that you can be a competent unit. And if they do that, that doesn't mean that they're going to shut out the Browns, but it means they're going to force a turnover or 2. They're going to force multiple punts in the first half, and they're going to put the offense in position to get out to that fast start and build an early lead. If they do those things, I think they're going to be in pretty darn good shape. But what about you? What do you think from a Browns perspective? What's the secret sauce, the formula to get to 1-0? Because I got to be honest with you, Spencer, if I'm driving down 71 on Sunday night and the Browns have beat the Bengals and the Bengals have started 0-1 for a 4th straight year, Cincinnati is going to be really, really frustrated and angry. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, and I think rightfully so. I mean, obviously all the optics around this game, it's going to lean Bengals for obvious reasons. And I certainly wouldn't begrudge Bengals fans if they feel that way should the Browns win on Sunday. I think the theme of this show has been centered around that Browns defensive line. It is the strongest unit on this team. The defense is going to go as that unit goes, but so I think is the Browns, or so are the Browns, I should say. And I think it is going to be about them making life very difficult for Joe Burrow. I mentioned like the Browns not being built for a shootout. I think where the Browns' weakness is on defense is actually in their secondary, because without Martin Emerson Jr., they've kind of been, I think, exposed a little bit in terms of the depth that they have back there. And so it's going to be up to that defensive front to get pressure and make sure that Joe Burrow doesn't have time to just dissect that secondary and, slice and dice them up and down the field to put up a lot of points, because you want to avoid having to get into a shootout with Joe Burrow. As much as I still think Joe Flacco can run this Browns offense effectively, which is why they brought him back here, I don't think he's at a stage of his career where he's built for that type of game where it's going to be like 42 to 38 or something crazy like that. Like, they need to try to keep the scoring to a minimum from Cincinnati, and getting to Joe Burrow is going to be the first part of that. From there, though, I do think you talk about a fast start for the Bengals. one of Kevin Stefanski's calling cards in the early years of his tenure here was that he always scored some sort of points on the opening drive of a game. Whether or not the Browns start with the ball first or they get it second, they have to take that opening drive down and punch in, get something on the board, some form of points on the board. Because like you said, when these games have generally gone in the Browns' favor, it's because they've put the pressure on Burrow to, hey, you really got to throw your team out of this thing, and you want to sort of create that pressure as early as possible. So those are two of the big things I'm looking at. I do think this Browns run game is going to be a key all season, because going back to Stefanski's offense, the West Coast play action style where they can sort of air it out a little bit once that play action game really sort of gets going, they need to have an effective run game. I don't have a ton of confidence in this Browns run game as currently constructed, just because your top ticket item, Quinshon Judkins, still isn't here. But this Bengals defense, as we've talked about the concerns on that side of the ball for them, feels like an opportunity to maybe build some momentum there. In the preseason, they were giving up, I think it was like 10.6 yards per carry to the two teams that the starters played against, the defensive starters played against. So I think there's going to be some opportunities there. They got to take advantage of those. And obviously, it's the most cliche one ever, but protecting the football has to happen. And that can be sometimes hard for Joe Flacco. He's one of those gunslinger style quarterbacks. But if it's going to be a repeated Jameis Winston from last year, then yeah, this Browns team is going to lose a lot of games because they're given too many other opportunities to the opposing team. So they got to be able to protect the football and sort of manage the clock in a way where Joe Burrow has it less.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. Keep the ball out of Joe's hands, and when he does have it, make him uncomfortable. That's the key. I think Joe just has a lot of answers right now. And if it's not going to be Jamar and T, then it'll be Mike Gesicki and Andre Yosavash. And if it's not those guys, you got Chase Brown in the backfield.
Yeah,
and if it's not those guys,
Brown.
You have Noah Fant. Like there's so many layers to this offense right now. I think they're going to do enough offensively. And then defensively, I think they'll be a bit better than people are expecting right now this week. I don't know that. I don't have high expectations because I have zero expectations for this defense, but I think they'll do enough. And so my prediction, I'll say 27-13. Not that it won't be rugged and slow moving. I don't think the Bengals jump out early. It's not going to be a blowout, but it ends up being a 2-score win where this Bengals team plays pretty well considering it's week 1 and they're known for their slow starts.
I was going to ask you too. I'm assuming there's no restrictions for Trey Hendrickson this week, right? Like I know he's been around, but he hasn't really been like fully practicing. But he's expected to just like be out there week 1 without any snap counts or anything, correct?
That's the expectation, is that he's just going to be out there. And honestly, I think they would love to limit his snap count a little bit just because he is 30 and he plays a ton of snaps, and you want him on those money downs to be Money Hendrickson, right? So wouldn't shock me if he plays maybe a few snaps less, but no, I think he'll be pretty much full go.
Okay. Yeah, it's good to know. I think good context for Browns fans to think about for this game. Listen, I'm not going to tell anybody to do what I'm about to do because I get it. It's the Bengals and they have Joe Burrow, and those are some lofty things to overcome when you're a team like the Browns, given their current state. But the history of the Bengals slow starts, I know they've tried to combat it this offseason. The defensive questions that I have, I think, and I've talked about this all offseason, it's not really a surprise because in this first 6 games of the Browns play, 5 playoff teams, the Bengals the other one, which were almost a playoff team last year. This is the one game that's felt like, hey, this could be the one that you steal, right? Because week 1s are fluky. Teams are sort of figuring things out. The Bengals are maybe the epitome of that in recent years. And for whatever reason, Myles Garrett and that defensive line have been sort of a kryptonite to Joe Burrow. So I'm going to predict the Browns win, get off on a high note to start the season. I'm not saying this means playoffs or anything. I'm still keeping my general win total for the season at like 6 wins. But I think they steal one against the Bengals in week 1. I'll say final score of 27-24. What did you say? 27-24? Did you say 27-24?
I said 27-13.
Oh, okay. 27-24. I think the Browns win by a field goal.
If any defensive scores, are the Browns putting up 27 points?
I think the defense gets a turnover that gives the offense a short field. I don't know that they're going to score themselves, but I'll say they get a turnover that gives them a short field.
20 real points then. I'm just
yeah.
Can't let it happen, Bengals.
Against this
defense.
Bengals
Pressure's
defense,
on.
though, I mean, anything's possible.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that cannot, should not happen if they're good. But that's what's so much fun about this week is it's AFC North. No one knows what's going to happen.
Exactly. And that's, I mean, listen, nobody thought the Browns were going to beat the Ravens randomly last year in the middle of the season either. And somehow they pulled it off. So, it's the fun of the AFC North. And we are certainly looking forward to covering it with you guys on Sunday. I'm sure many of you will be glued to your TVs watching this one go down. But that's going to do it for us. We appreciate you stopping on by for this crossover episode of Locked on Browns and Locked on Bengals. We will obviously be doing this again. I won't see you again, James, until Week 17, the farthest apart that our two crossover episodes can be. So
Week 18, even farther.
Yeah, Week 18. You're right. Sorry, that 17 game schedule just still not sticking for me.
You can find James over at Locked On Bengals and Spencer over at Locked On Browns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Two teams that really intrigue me personally are the Dolphins and the Colts. I think that both teams right now are looking to make some noise, but there could be change on the horizon if their seasons don't go as anticipated. Obviously, with the Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa, Mike McDaniel, this might be the last ride for Mike McDaniel. And for the Colts, they went with Daniel Jones over Anthony Richardson, but just how good is Daniel Jones actually going to be? So Kyle Crouch of Locked On Dolphins, Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts, talk about which team could have the advantage.
All right, Kyle, welcome back. Welcome back, everydayers. So let's talk about what is going to matter the most in whether the Colts or the Dolphins are going to come out of this matchup with a shiny new 1-0 record. Kyle, what do you think? What do the Dolphins got to do to win this one?
Yeah, I'll start with avoiding giving up excessive yards after contact. And this goes back to the last couple of times that the Dolphins have played the Colts, but even last year as a team, they were top 10 in yardage allowed against the run before contact and dead last in the NFL in yardage allowed after contact and running plays. So they couldn't tackle anybody. And that's why you see a lot of attention to your defensive interior for when guys are running between the tackles in piles and guys that can deconstruct blocks a little cleaner, guys that are a little bit squattier. You really saw them embrace the linebacker depth where it was David Long got cut midseason and Anthony Walker took the starting spot. He's back in Indy. So he just came back for the Colts. But they added Willie Gay and KJ Britt as two linebackers to go with Tyrell Dotson and Jordan Brooks as the starters. They completely remade the safety room from top to bottom. Like the whole thing goes out. Javon Holland, Jordan Poyer. It was a group that desperately up the middle needed attention, and they invested a lot in it, even if it wasn't a lot of premium assets. They made wholesale changes, and they need to be able to tackle better. I think that's the first thing, especially because I think that gets them into a game script in which they can lean on that pass rush we just talked about, really attacking Daniel Jones and that 3/5 of that Colts offensive line that you have some questions about. I think on the offensive side for Miami, the big key to the game is going to be making sure that you stay balanced on early downs. This was a team last year that could not run the ball with consistency. They have their projected starting five. You could count on one hand in the Mike McDaniel era the number of games that they've played with the projected starting five going into the season where they actually had it. Like it just has not existed between Taron Armstead and Austin Jackson and Isaiah Wynn. It's been brutal as far as the Dolphins in that standpoint. And they bring in Ollie Gordon as a bigger, more powerful back who had a great preseason. I'm really interested to see how willing the Dolphins are to be disciplined with Mike McDaniel to run on early downs with a player that can fall forward and try to keep you out of 2nd and 11, which the Dolphins saw way too often last year. And then I'll give a special teams element here where I'm really interested in how they're going to choose to strategize the kicking game with the kickoffs, where Jason Sanders is on short-term IR. So they're going to be elevating kicker Riley Patterson off the practice squad for the first 3 weeks of the season and evaluating him while they're figuring out how long Jason Sanders' rehab looks like, if they need to open up a 53 spot. So these new kickoff rules, if you just put it out of the back of the end zone, you're giving up a lot of field position to start on the 35. If you fail to execute the kick, they're starting on the 40. Do they have Jake Bailey do it? Does Riley Patterson do it? what's their strategy? They have a new special teams coordinator this year in Craig Aukerman after a really awful tenure with Danny Crossman, who'd held the position since 2019. It looked really good throughout the preseason, but now you have the extra layer of, hey, your kicker's out. And that's the guy that executes all your kickoffs where this new field position battle could start to take place. So those are the three keys for me. Tackle a lot better than you did in 2024. Be a lot more committed to being balanced on early downs, and push the right buttons with what you have at your disposal to not lose the field position battle game from the jump because you're missing your starting kicker.
Yeah, that kicking game part of it, that aspect is actually, it's a really good point. We were talking to Colts special teams coordinator Brian Mason yesterday, and he's been kind of turning over all summer, like what he thinks other teams are going to do. He thinks there's going to be a lot of kind of like flub kicks and like kicking it short just to get the play active as soon as possible to close the gap and kind of get the returner pinned back as far back as possible. So yeah, when we're talking about the Colts, again, I had mentioned, what does a Shane Steichen, Daniel Jones offense look like? I know the Colts are going to want to try and run the ball. You had mentioned Miami struggled to bring guys down, lots of yards after contact, yards after the catch. I think that's what the Colts are going to try and generate throughout the year. Tyler Warren and Josh Downs, probably an extension of their run game and using those guys to create yards after the catch like they do so well. But obviously Jonathan Taylor is going to be the engine to the whole thing this year. 1,400 yards despite missing 3 games last year. I think they're going to just give him the ball as much as they can. Now, the key to it is they can't just bail on it if it's not working, because Steichen does kind of have that tendency where if something's not working, he'll just kind of yank the cord on it and then try and force whatever else is going. And it kind of makes them one-dimensional at times. So would love to see them run the ball, because I think that's the most likely avenue for Daniel Jones to actually take a deep shot, is to get Miami's front to buy in to the run, sell out a little bit, and then just maybe get Alec Pierce involved earlier than the fourth quarter, which is something that we didn't see a lot of. The guy led the league in yards per catch last year, but he was so seldom used until late in the game when they really needed it. So what does that look like? Try to establish the run. Obviously, Jones, I'm very a little concerned about the pass rush. We'll see how that looks. But then as far as the defensive side of the ball for the Colts, my perception of Miami is they're very good at the timing of things. When it's working well, to is getting rid of the ball quickly, and the pass rush is just going to have to get home and kind of mess that timing up a little bit. 2 years ago, the Colts were great there. They had an Indy era record of sacks over 50. They were near the top. They were in the top 5 of the league, but last year came down to earth. They're more bottom 5. So they're going to be very dependent on Latu kind of taking a leap, because the rest of their pass rushers are just kind of guys outside of DeForest Buckner who can provide some interior push. Latu's going to have to be that guy that's threatening the backfield consistently throughout the game. Make it a little more difficult, disrupt that timing for Miami, because that's going to be huge. And then I think they're going to have one playmaker that steps up and matches the energy that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Achane bring. You're going to have Jonathan Taylor either having a signature game, or Tyler Warren just really wearing down those defenders and making it just unfun to have to cover him and bring him down every single play. Because it already does look like he's going to be a significant part of this offense, even as a rookie. Or like I mentioned, Josh Downs. You have a guy like Daniel Jones, who's obviously, his yards per attempt is always going to be lower regardless of what's around him. I think Downs is going to feast in this offense with Jones specifically at quarterback. They're going to have to create those yards after catch, I think, in order for this to really work and sustain that offense a little bit.
Of course, you can find Kyle over at Locked On Dolphins. You can find Jake over at Locked On Colts, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, we still have a great slate of 1 p.m. games to dive into as we get you ready for week 1 on this Sunday preview edition of the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot coming your way. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. With football back, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. I've been playing PrizePicks lately, and it's such a fun way to stay locked in for the season. It's super quick, super easy, and honestly, my favorite way to follow along with football. I love checking projections, like for the Sunday night game between the Bills and the Ravens. Josh Allen, is he going to go for more or less in his passing yard total? Or Derrick Henry, more or less than 1 rushing touchdown? And this week's max discounts, they include Lamar Jackson, 0.5 passing yards. So you can download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Moving along here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Ostreicher still here with you, previewing all of Sunday's amazing action. I mean, any football is amazing, and of course, so happy to be back here. And of course, Sunday isn't the only action. I mean, of course, you got the Thursday night game between the Cowboys and the Eagles, the Friday night game between the Chiefs and the Chargers. There, I just love when weekends are packed with football. But let's get back into the Sunday 1 p.m. slate, and we'll start off here with the Giants and the Commanders. Obviously, the Commanders put together a Cinderella run last season. The Giants are hoping to put together maybe one of their own this year. Who knows? So Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants and David Harrison of Locked On Commanders gets you ready for Sunday.
For the Giants to pull off a road upset, it's less about the spectacular plays, although you certainly love to see those if you're on the Giants side, more about avoiding the foolish pre-snap penalties that killed the New York Giants all last year. Patricia, we all know mental mistakes are the worst mistakes. I'm pretty sure Brian Dable agrees with Dan Quinn and every other head coach you and I have probably ever covered. You can deal with the aggressive penalties, the competitive penalties. It's the mental mistakes, the dumb penalties that should not happen that kill everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the Giants, especially in an unfriendly environment, they got to be locked in and focused. All right. Too many pre-snap penalties last year, thwarted drives, and this team is just not good enough just right now to where they can commit a penalty and say, oh, okay, no big deal, we'll bounce back. No. They went backwards far too often. And when you go from 2nd and short, 3rd and short, and now you commit a false start, now you've got 2nd and long, 3rd and long, that changes your entire approach. That gives the advantage to the defensive side of the ball. And you know what? This is a team, and another aspect of this is this Giants team has to start off fast, which means the game's got to be as neat as possible for them. The Giants in the last 2 regular season openers, they've been outscored 68-6. They've only scored 3 points of those 6 points, 3 points in the first half. So you can't be having mistakes that, abort a drive, a promising looking touchdown drive. And now all of a sudden you've got to settle for a field goal or you come up empty. So very, very important. I know the Giants have been locked in on that. They've been working on that. Matter of fact, over the summer, Brian Dable, if you committed a pre-snap penalty, you were pulled out. So it was like high time you were holding guys accountable for screwing up in that regard.
Yeah, I like that mentality. I like that methodology. Jaden Daniels also kicked a teammate out of the huddle for committing a false start. You love that kind of accountability because that's how important those things are. Patricia, for the Commanders, their keys to victory, establish the run and establish it early, right? Again, everyone wants to know is the New York Giants run defense going to be improved this year over last year? The Washington Commanders need to come out of week 1 with everybody saying, no, the Giants run defense is just as bad as it was last year. Now, if it gets better after that, so be it. But this week, you need to not be the outlier. You need to repeat the patterns of last year. Don't be the guy left outside of the party. Continue your home dominance. Look, Washington, they need to get their home crowd involved in this game early. We know Giants fans travel. We know there's going to be a good amount of Giants fans in Northwest Stadium on Sunday. 1, because the DMV is a transplant area, and 2, because they travel well, and it's not that far to travel, to be quite honest with you. But last year, the Commanders had 7 home wins in that season, or 7 or more home wins, for the first time since 1991. Last year, there was a lot of 1991 references and comparisons because that's how long it's been since we saw the Commanders play football to the same quality as they did back in 1991 when Washington was doing much better things. So continue that, but get the home crowd involved early to create problems for the Giants. And then Jaden Daniels needs to be Jaden Daniels. I'm not going to say that I'm really concerned about this, to be quite honest with you, but new addition to Laramie Tunsil, better pass blocking is expected. Deebo Samuel on the roster, better weapon, a little bit more versatility in the offense is expected. Those things can ideally, potentially lead you to a Jaden Daniels quarterback who says, you know what, I don't need to be as athletic. I don't need to run as much as I did last year. I don't need to challenge my 891 rookie record for quarterback rushing. I can just stay in the pocket longer. I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to be that anyway. I'm pretty sure Jaden is a Tiger that's very, very comfortable with his stripes, and I don't say that because he played at LSU, but it's a good analogy. So I'm not actually concerned about it, but the potential is certainly there. So I think a key there is going to be Jaden being Jaden and making Malik Neighbors, his buddy on the sideline, watch in amazement and pain as he does not get to get his revenge against his best friend.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants, I went around the locker room today asking them, I said, how is Jaden Daniels' game matured from his first game last year to, the NFC Championship game? Smarter, quicker decisions, more decisive. You can see the leadership oozing out of his pores. Just a lot of, respect from the locker room. And Jaden Daniels is a guy who can hurt a team with his legs, with his arms. There's just so many things that he can do and do at a high enough level. And the Giants, they know that that's, something they got to keep an eye on. That's something that they can't let ruin their game. And, oh, by the way, the Giants should have a healthy kicker this year. I know in the first game last year they didn't. But Graham Gano, for those wondering, he is healthy and ready to go.
That's good. I don't know Graham personally, but I know some people here who know Graham personally. And from all accounts, he's a really good dude. So happy to hear that he is in good health. One of these teams is going to be 1-0. One of these teams is going to be 0-1. Neither of these teams better be 0-1. I'm going to punch myself if that happens for even speaking it as a possibility. We both covered a Giants Commanders tie. We don't need to do it anytime ever again.
Be sure to go support Patricia over at Locked On Giants and David over at Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Las Vegas Raiders with new quarterback Geno Smith, new head coach Pete Carroll. They will be traveling to Foxborough to take on the New England Patriots, year 2 of Drake May, and of course, year 1 again of Mike Vrabel in New England. Obviously, very big New England ties with Mike Vrabel. So we get you ready for that game with your boy Q of Locked On Raiders and Nick Cattles of Locked On Patriots.
Here we go. Nick, I hope you're ready for this, man. So far, so good. Everything's been fun. Crossover edition. It's great to catch up with you, talk a little Raiders and Patriots, but now is the money time, right? Now is the winning time. So I'm going to start off with you. What does it take for the Patriots? What are they going to need to do on Sunday to get a win and go 1-0 on the young season?
Offensively, they've got to protect Drake May. They've got to make sure that he's not running around in that pocket and making mistakes. So protect Drake May, because if he has some time, I do think Josh McDaniels will find the weaknesses of this Raiders defense. He will attack those seams. He will attack those linebackers and safeties with the running backs. I do think the Patriots are going to try to establish the run an awful lot this year, kind of their tone, their mentality. But if you give Drake May some time, that gives the receiver some time to separate and just less turnover-worthy mistakes if he gets to sit back there and pick things apart. So offensively, protect Drake May and make sure that you limit his mistakes. Defensively, Q, I just look at this Raiders team, and last year, man, oh man, they could not run the football. And they obviously addressed that with Genti, who is an explosive player. So one of the questions I have about this Patriots defense is their interior defensive line and their ability to stop the run. Milton Williams is smaller. Mike Vrabel, Terrell Williams likes smaller interior defensive linemen because they like being ultra aggressive and focus on the pass rush. But Milton Williams played less than 50% of the snaps last year in Philly because they weren't sure he could consistently stop the run. I think that's still a question. Christian Barmore could be an all-out stud, but he dealt with blood clots last year. They have really managed him, the workload. He has not practiced very often, 2 times, 3 times in a row. He had one joint practice against Minnesota instead of both. So how much does Christian Barmore play? Kyrie's Tonga has been a little bit of a revelation. One of those just random 1-year free agents you pick up. He's been really good in camp. But the run game, they've got to be able to limit Genty, because I just feel if Ashton Genty gets going, then everything else kind of gets going. Geno can attack certain matchups. I do think the secondary should be okay against Bowers and Myers. I think those guys will make some plays, but I do think they'll be able to do enough to not, just crater. But they've got to make sure they can stop Genty on the early downs, because if that gets rolling and the Raiders are working with 3rd and short all day, this Patriots defense will give up points.
Yeah, well, I think those are really great keys right there. That makes a lot of sense. Again, I feel like this is a very evenly matched game, and you're looking at a lot of similarities. I think both teams want to establish the run. Both teams want to be able to use play action pass. They want to look at their tight ends. They want to be able to, find the open zones in the middle of the field and be able to, capitalize there. But, for the Raiders offensively, they obviously have to establish the run game. I mean, you're right. They were dead last in every rushing category in 2024, right? They had 1,300 something yards rushing. 5 other teams in the National Football League, 5 other players, I should say, in the National Football League had better than what the Raiders did as a team last year. So that obviously can't happen. That's why you go get Ashton Genty. You've got Zamir White that looks good, and you also bring in Raheem Mostert. Chip Kelly's offenses are always based off the running, right? There's always an element of the run game in a Chip Kelly offense, whether he starts off with the runs or he ends the game with the running attack. And that's really what I want to focus in on when it comes to the offense. We know Ashton Genty is going to get a boatload of carries, but Nick, my thing is, when is he getting these carries? Is he getting them early in the game, or is he getting them in the second half, late in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter? If he's getting them in the second half, the Raiders feel good about where they're at in the game. Right? They're not playing catch up. They're not trying to throw the ball around the yard and trying to play hurry up and catch up. If he's only getting them in the first half and you don't see Ashton Genty in the second half, things have gone wrong. Right? So you got to be able. I mean, seriously, it's just that simple. Like the carries, they're not all equal to each other. Early carries, early in the game, that's one thing. But if you're carrying the ball in the fourth quarter, you're either trying to salt the game away, or you're really close and you feel good that you can still stick to your game plan. And that's all you have to ask for in a game where, the home team is a 2.5-point favorite. That's a pick 'em. That's a pick 'em game, right? So that's why the paying attention to and monitoring when Genty gets the bulk of his carries is going to be a huge thing offensively. And if they are able to establish the run, like I think they'll obviously try to do, then Geno Smith will have an opportunity to do the play action pass. And he has no problem, I can tell you from being in practice every day, no problem taking some deep shots. They're going to take some shots down the field. They haven't done that in a handful of years. It's gone away from the Raiders' identity, but it's going to be back this year. Whether it's Dante Thornton Jr. that they're trying to take a chunk shot to, the rookie, if they're trying to hit Trey Tucker deep, if they're trying to get somebody down the seam, whatever the case may be, they're going to try to pick up some chunk yards with Geno Smith, and he's very accurate throwing the deep ball. So those are going to be some keys. Establish the run. Obviously, the offensive line's got to do their job, because if the O-line doesn't do their job, it doesn't matter about the bells and whistles. The bells and whistles aren't going to matter at all. So that's obviously something to pay attention to offensively. And defensively, that defensive line's going to have to do their job, because the secondary is this is all like the first day of school. They're all going to learn, right? I mean, this is going to be one of those where it's like, well, this is the first time we've ever done this, so it's a learning experience. The defensive line is going to have to carry the load. And it's funny. Yeah, they're going to have to learn today, right? I mean, the offensive line there, I mean, it's so funny, man, because, again, the Patriots are trying to establish a new offensive line. The Raiders are trying to do the same thing. I hate to, sound like I'm repeating myself, but, man, this is it's almost like the Spider-Man meme, right, where you're pointing at you and you're pointing back and it's all the same. It feels like this is very similar. We talked about storylines. We didn't even talk about Genty versus Travion Henderson. Can you imagine if Travion goes off and has a huge game and Genty doesn't? And be like, look, and the Raiders drafted Genty number 6 overall. They could have waited and got a guy like Travion Henderson. Why would you? That's why you don't take a running back so early. Or if Genty goes off and has a phenomenal game, it's like, oh, that's why you go and get a guy that early. You know what I mean? Like, that's a storyline that's built in as well in this game. It's something to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, I think Genty will get a lot more touches than Henderson this year. That's just my feel. I think Henderson, they'll try to limit him, I would imagine, between 10 and 15 touches a game, just because he's shown in his past, especially last year at Ohio State with Quinton Junkins, that, he's somebody who's better. He's more when there's less. You don't want to overuse him, because he tends to get a little bit battered. But, yeah, I mean, he's at a special camp, and I think he could have an immediate impact for this offense. And you talk about Geno Smith going deep and testing guys. Why not? I mean, Jalen Hawkins, safety for the Patriots, is more of a downhill in the box type of guy. You know, he's assignment, sure, but he's not the best in the world in coverage. And then Craig Woodson is a rookie out of Cal. So why not test a rookie every once in a while?
No doubt. No doubt. And, you know, it's talking about testing guys and secondaries and all that. Look, Stephon Diggs, older wide receiver coming off a torn ACL. The Raiders just signed Amari Cooper, older wide receiver coming back into the mix with the silver and black, right? I mean, how are those guys going to perform? What is their role going to be? How good is Stephon Diggs going to be? You know, I know Mike Vrabel said he's going to be out there, but at what capacity is he going to be out there? And Amari Cooper, he says he's in shape, but Nick, you know, there's shape and there's football shape. Yep. So what's his role going to be, right? I mean, Jacoby Myers, another friend of the Patriots, right? Somebody that the Patriots are very familiar with. Again, so many players that are interchangeable with the Raiders and the Patriots in this matchup. So there's going to be a lot of folks that are looking at each other like, hey, I remember you. Hey, I remember you. Yeah, I remember you too. So, All right. So we'll do this. We'll break it down like this. Patriots are 2.5-point favorites in this game, according to FanDuel.com. How are you feeling like this one ends up? What happens on Sunday? Do the Patriots get a dub and then start 1-0? What happens?
I think it's going to be a close game. I think both offenses will have opportunities to make plays and score points. I've got the Patriots by a field goal. And look, it's week 1, right?
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Right. Exactly.
I'm going to go with the Pats by a field goal because they're home.
Right.
And, you know, I think their defense is a little bit better or at least better than the Raiders defense. So I think they'll make a couple of more plays, but I do think this could be an entertaining, fun, close game for week 1.
It's so funny when you said you had the Patriots by a field goal. I was like, "Ooh!" And it's because I had the Raiders by a field goal. So I'm right there with you. And again, you're right. It's week 1, so we don't have a real sample size. We can't really build off anything that we saw in preseason because we know we didn't see anything in preseason. So I agree with you. I think that the Pats defense is a little bit further ahead than the Raiders defense is, just because there's so many questions in the secondary and so many guys that are just starting to work with each other. If they gel immediately, okay, cool. Now it's another conversation. But if they don't, if they're a little slow out of the gates, I can see Josh McDaniels having a couple things up his sleeve and dialing it up for the Patriots. But yeah, I got the Raiders getting a victory, a small victory, 23-20. In New England. Pete Carroll gets his first dub, and I think that it's very important for this team to get a dub. And I'm sure it's important for the Patriots, but the Raiders need to start trying to establish a winning culture, something that they haven't had in a long time, something that Pete Carroll's been, preaching. So I think for the Raiders to be able to go on the road and pick up a victory, that'll do a lot for that locker room to say, see, yeah, this is the right guy, and he's headed in the right direction. It's not just a lot of stuff that we hear and talk about during practice, but it's actually something that will translate to game day. So I think this game is very monumental for the Raiders to get a dub. So I'm going to say that they're going to go 23-20. You don't have to give me a score, but you said Patriots by 3. So I feel like we're basically where we started, right?
Yeah, I'll give you a score, 27-24. I'll just throw it.
Okay. There you go. Nick says 27-24 Patriots. I say 23-20 Raiders. Obviously, both of us think the teams respectively are going to start the season 1-0. Something will shake out.
Q can be found over at Locked On Raiders. Nick can be found over at Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Panthers and the Jaguars, 2 teams. Bryce Young is a guy that we saw get benched last year. Then he comes back and actually puts together a pretty solid year, all things considered. Trevor Lawrence coming off of a disappointing year there. 2 teams are looking to have a better year than they did last year. So Julian Council of Locked On Panthers, as well as Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars, talk about which one of these 2 teams could come out on top.
All right, the winning formula. The winning formula for the Jacksonville Jaguars and any NFL team is turnovers, a lack of them. That's how you get to winning. However, for Jacksonville, that's really, really critical because they've had a problem in the past with turnovers. In fact, since Trevor Lawrence has been in the NFL, he's the quarterback that has the most turnovers. Not all interceptions, some fumbles. That's, to me, trying to be Superman. Like I said, Clark Kent, Superman every now and then. You don't need to try to play hero ball like he has in the past. And I think they've helped him with that, with giving him pre-snap answers and weaponizing them a little bit.
Yeah, Superman's just a man sometimes, and so we'll see if Trevor Lawrence can bounce back this year. But yeah, every single week I tell people, you got to be able to stop the run, got to be able to take care of the football, got to be able to protect your quarterback, and you got to be able to hit on some explosive plays. But really, for me, going to this game, there's 2 big questions I really have about this defense. I mean, there's probably more than two, but two really big ones. Are they going to be able to stop the run? Are they going to be able to get pressure? Because they have not been able to stop the run, really dating back to when Ron Rivero's last year in 2019, when the owner, David Tepper, put the onus on Ron. You know what? In Pittsburgh, we ran a 3-4. I think we should run a 3-4. And since they've gone to that scheme, they have not had success. Now, constantly last season, Dave Canales was asked about defense coordinator Rogero Rivero entering into his third season, and somehow still in this job, despite the fact they gave up the most points in the history of the National Football League last year. But Dave said he loves the scheme. So it's not the scheme. It's the players. It's the personnel. And do they have the personnel now to be able to stop the run? I think it's possible that they do with the additions that I mentioned earlier of Turk Wharton and a Bobby Brown III, and then bringing back Derek Brown healthy this year and having Ashawn Robinson. There really should not be much of an excuse for this team. Patrick Jones, the second as well, the edge rusher they brought in from Minnesota. He can set the edge and stop the run. Nick Scorton, who they drafted in the second round at A&M, he can also stop the run. Like, they have to be able to do that, and the linebacker play must be better. So that's like a key for me. You got to be able to put it on Trevor Lawrence, because honestly, as you mentioned, he's going to put the ball in harm's way. And you have J.C. Horn on the back end. You have Teron Merrick, you brought over. You have Mike Jackson. Like, I feel good about what they have in the secondary. Maybe the other safety spot's a question mark. And then the other thing for me is, can you get pressure? Because they have not been able to do that. They moved on from Brian Burns to Devion Clowney. He did well as far as when you look at PFF and ESPN pass rush win rate, but he's not on anybody's team right now because he's not a difference maker at this stage of his career. So do they have a difference maker? Can DJ Wonnum step up and be that? Can Scorton be that? Can Princely Iman-Mielen, the former Florida Gator, Ole Miss Rebel, can he be able to do that? That's what I need to see from this team. I'm not super concerned about what the offense can do. If they can just play the way but Bryce Young played the last season, but get an ability on defense to stop the run and get after the passer, those are the two things I want to see from them on Sunday.
The Jaguars are very, very lengthy. And if they're going to win, I'm a fan of Bryce Young. I'm not necessarily a fan of really, really short quarterbacks, and he is very small.
Sure.
I used to sit there and say Drew Brees, and I might be making Drew Brees upset by saying they're about the same height. He's a little guy, but he has a rocket arm. I don't think you need to let him be able to get confidence and get into a rhythm. If that happens, you're going to be in trouble. So it's going to be up to Josh. It's going to be up to Trayvon Walker to make sure that doesn't happen. Now, Travis Hunter, what will it look like? None of us know. Will the element of surprise play a factor in this game? Yeah, because I think you move up and give up an extra draft pick. You don't just do that because the dude is multiple position-wise. You do it because you're going to have a plan to put the ball in his hand and allow him to make plays. And Liam Cohen said something today. He said, instead of just, it's okay to have a 14, 15 play drive, but sometimes we want them to be 3 and 4 plays because we need chunk plays and to be able to score quickly. Watch out for the Jaguars trying to get those chunk plays and score quickly so they can dictate this game with their defense and pressure that they're able to put on Bryce.
Well, let me ask you this. What's the weather been like in Jacksonville? Like, has it been hot? Because it has not been hot here in Carolina.
Not blazing.
Okay.
No, about 79 to anywhere between 79 and 84. The key is, though, I'm watching this forecast, man, and, you know, that rain. If we get some inclement weather, that might change the way this entire game looks.
Well, absolutely. And looking at it on Sunday, well, that's next Sunday. This Sunday, I mean, 92. I mean, that's a lot hotter than it's been in Carolina over the last this summer. I mean, since they got the training camp, that first week or two. It was that North Carolina heat that we all know and love. But since then, it really has not been that hot. And aside from that one day out there in Houston for joint practice, this team hasn't really been exposed to a lot of that kind of heat and humidity they're going to be dealing with down in Florida potentially on Sunday. So I'm curious just with the conditioning level of it. And Dave Canales again brought this up on Wednesday, if they're going to be able to sustain, if Jacksonville can have those long drives. Like, there could be some benefit for both teams, but particular for Jacksonville, if Carolina's defense not able to get out the field and they do get kind of worn down from that. But then I guess one other thing I'll point out too, just with the receivers for Carolina, brought them up earlier. Can they get separation? Hunter Renfrow, no question about that. That's what he does. Like, he has a PhD in getting open when it comes to his route running here in the NFL and back in college at Clemson. McMillan,
That was a big question for him coming out of the draft process. We finally get to see it now on Sunday. Xavier Legette didn't have the best separation grades looking at next-gen stats last year. So those guys have to get open for Bryce Young, especially, again, with the lack of continuity there overall at that top trio of wide receivers, and then going up against a defense that's going to really be able to try to get after Bryce Young, especially with the questions there potentially at left tackle, whether Ike Kwanu is going to play or not. So one last thing I'm kind of looking at for Carolina if they're going to have success and win this game on Sunday.
You just gave me another matchup. Hunter Renfrow, Jordan Lewis. Jordan Lewis was the first guy the Jaguars signed in free agency, and he was the dude that they circled and they penciled because James Gladstone said that they had been looking at him, trying to figure out ways when he was with the Rams to put him on that team. All right, with a quick prediction, I'm going to go Jacksonville 32, Carolina 17.
Wow. The line over at FanDuel, our friends over there, is 3.5. That's what they have for Jacksonville. Home favorites, of course. I don't have a prediction. I'm not doing it. I don't really have time for someone yelling at me. Yeah, fine. Yeah, I'm a coward. I admit it, whatever, freely. But I do think it will be a close game. And I'm expecting there to be points because I'm going to have to see it with Carolina's defense. And I'm guessing you're probably need to see it with Jacksonville's defense as well to really believe that they're going to be able to get out the field consistently. So I do think that this can be a decently high scoring game with both teams scoring into the 20s, maybe even like 28 plus points. So yeah, we'll see. I think it should be an exciting one. And for Carolina, can they get their season off the ground? They started off 1-7 last year, 0-6 a year prior to that. It's been a minute since they won a season opener. Have not won a season opener since they had Sam Darnold as their quarterback back in 2021. His revenge game against the New York Jets, who were fully justified in moving on from him. So that was the last time Carolina won a opener to start off the season. Can they do that on Sunday? We'll see.
We got a kicker. The reason why you get to a number like 32 is because you think they're going to kick a lot of field goals. Cam Little kicked the 70-yarder in preseason. And then he kicked another one that was like 59 yards. So that would be like a guy playing in Charlotte and being able to kick it from Fort Mill, South Carolina. Look at me knowing all about it.
Look at that geography.
Look, come on, man. Come on down 77. I know I've been up and down some streets now. That's what I do, dog.
Shout out York County.
Yeah, look at you. You went a little deep on me now, calling it York County. Yeah, man. But I think what happens is you get a dude that can kick it like that, and every time that little red line that you see on TV is going to be on like the 48-yard line of Carolina. That's just how this dude rolls, man.
Julian's got you covered with Panthers coverage at Locked On Panthers, and of course, Tony's got you covered over at Locked On Jaguars with Jaguars coverage, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Rounding out the 1 p.m. slate, we have the Arizona Cardinals and the New Orleans Saints, two teams that admittedly aren't expected to make a lot of noise in the NFC this season. The Cardinals with Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr., they will hope to beat the Saints that are going through a quarterback situation that is, Spencer Rattler ended up winning that job, but of course they took Tyler Shuck in the second round of this past draft. So Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals and Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints talk about if the Cardinals will come out on top or if the Saints will have something to say about that.
Wrap it up this crossover Thursday edition. Alex Clancy, Ross Jackson here, getting it all taken care of for you. Alex, the Arizona Cardinals win this football game if what?
They score more points than the Saints. Let's wrap it up, Ross.
All right, we're out of here.
they will score, or they will win. They will beat New Orleans on Sunday if they win the turnover battle, which is the cliche one. You got to win the turnover battle usually 100%. To win games. It really comes down to pressuring Spencer Rattler and containing Alvin Kamara. I joke about 41. The dude is an absolute terror. I have him on every single one of my fantasy football teams. Every single one. I don't care if he has 9 catches for 29 yards. The dude is going to be able to wreak havoc if given the opportunity. And with the defense, with a lot of dudes who haven't played together before, and a lot of second-year dudes and a lot of rookies, Alvin Kamara could shatter a game plan. So it's Alvin Kamara contain and pressuring the second-year quarterback, making his first start as the, de facto starting quarterback going into a new season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the run game is big for New Orleans as well. If you get Alvin Kamara going, it takes a lot of pressure off of that young quarterback, Spencer Rattler, and then you get an opportunity to kind of get him in a little bit of a rhythm based off of that. So it all comes down to the run game for New Orleans, and therefore I agree, stopping the run game for Arizona. Over on the Saints side, the New Orleans Saints win if, the New Orleans Saints win if they magically have a run defense, which they did not have for very much of last year. They finished 31st in the NFL in rushing yards last year. And last year's version of the Arizona Cardinals were top 5 in the NFL, or at least top 10 in the NFL, when it came to 15-plus yard rushes on the season, top 10 in 20-plus yard rushes as well. And New Orleans has a propensity to give up a lot of explosive plays. So that's got to be a big part of what it is that they do here. And that run game is not just about James Conner for the New Orleans Saints, though obviously he is a big one to watch, but it's also about Kyler Murray. The New Orleans Saints struggle and have struggled, and might continue to struggle, we'll see, up against mobile quarterbacks, and they have an early test with a brand new defensive scheme and a brand new defensive play caller here on Sunday up against Arizona.
Yeah, it's gonna be fascinating. I've been a proponent of Trey Benson getting 10% more looks as well. So it's not also going to be James Conner and Kyler Murray. Trey Benson, third round pick out of Florida State, who's an absolute, he was a ridiculous football player, running back last year at Florida State. I'm starting to see, I call it a solar eclipse, Ross, where an older player goes one way and the young player in the same position, they start to cross over. Like, it's not all the way there. It's not even close to the way there. The sun and the moon aren't touching yet. But 2025 is hopefully would become the year where you start to see Trey Benson as RB1 and you start to see James Conner as in the LeGarrette Blount role moving forward, which is what I've wanted for him for years. Important touches whatsoever. With this offense, they have a lot to prove. This could be a situation where the Saints are the guinea pig for all of the built-up aggression the Arizona Cardinals have on offense, where all they've heard all offseason is, it ain't good enough, it ain't good enough, it ain't good enough. Why are you running it back? This could be the time where they unleash. And, good luck, because they'll run the ball 45 times if they're not being stopped.
Yeah, and look, the Saints kind of have that same idea too, right? They've been told over and over again all offseason that they haven't done enough to change and that there's not enough new especially over on the defensive side of the football. But, they get to come in and maybe take some of that aggression out as well. So with these two teams looking to become the aggressor, I think the Saints are in that same boat. How do you see this game playing out? What's your prediction?
I think it's going to be higher scoring than expected. I think the Cardinals are going to win 27-17, something like that. Kind of take an earlier lead and coast, maybe give up a late touchdown. This is not bravado or expectation of victory by any stretch. Let's get it right. Like, this is the defense will lead the way and the offense will take the opportunities given to them, maybe on short fields, maybe on 3 and outs, being able to, compound the issue with the defense that just got off the field that has to go back on after a failed 3 and out series by the Saints. 27-17, cover, win comfortably.
Yeah, like it. I have the Cardinals winning as well, but I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints to cover. I think this is like a 19-24 game, and the Saints show some, good things, right? They stay competitive. They keep this game closer than expected, and maybe even put together a couple of late drives, like maybe the touchdown in there comes later on in the game, and you just kind of see the confidence begin to build. I think success looks different for New Orleans this year. It's not about the win-loss record for them. It's about developing, growing, and trending in the right direction over the course of the regular season. Something I'm sure you're familiar with and watching the Cardinals kind of grow out of where they once were.
Well, and that's the thing. This is all about wins and losses for the Cardinals. It's the antithesis. Doesn't matter about Kyler Murray's numbers. It doesn't matter about anybody's numbers, Marvin's numbers. Doesn't matter. Wins and losses is it. So if the Cardinals start 1-0, I don't care if the Saints forfeit and the Cardinals win 2-0. Win is the same as a win if they score 100 points or if they score 3. So it'll be fascinating to see two teams going in different trajectories, match up. And one last thing before we go. I'm a Spencer Rattler fan. I remember he got Wally pipped at Oklahoma, and then he had no shot elsewhere. And I think the dude has got a good enough arm. He's smart enough. He's mobile enough to be able to have a 10-year career in the NFL. I don't see him as a patsy by any stretch.
Absolutely. We'll see how it all goes. Both of these teams looking for a win here in the opening week.
Check out Alex over at Locked On Cardinals and Ross over at Locked On Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That'll wrap up the 1 p.m. slate, but it won't wrap up our show on the Ultimate NFL pregame shows. We still have so much content to dive into. We'll get to the 4 o'clock slate of games coming up next. This show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. As an athlete focuses on every detail, Mazda does the same, from metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather. And you can feel it the moment you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, the intuitive controls, and the standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. Whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel really, really special. Plus, Mazda offers more than safety. It's won more 2025 IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. We are still here with you, breaking down all of Week 1's action with the help of our local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There's so much to dive into. Again, I'm just so excited that football is back. It's been such a long time coming, and I can't believe we have finally made it. I'm extremely excited for it. We talked about the 1 p.m. slate. We're going to move now into the 4 o'clock slate. We're going to start off with the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers, two teams who are going to be two of the Titans in that NFC North division that could end up being the best division in football. The Lions lost both of their assistant coaches this offseason, while the Packers gained Micah Parsons in a trade just a week ago. So we're going to be diving into all that you need to know in this game. Matt Derry of Locked On Lions, Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers. They take you through all the storylines.
Locked On Packers, Locked On Lions across over Thursday. Peter Bukowski here with Matt Derry. Matt, I said turnovers, I think, are the key to this game. You mentioned Week 1, often very sloppy. I think we might be a little underwhelmed with the way that this game looks aesthetically.
Yeah.
What is your key to victory here?
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, turnovers is always a key, but you're right. In a game like this where guys haven't played, it's basically been joint practices for the Lions regulars, and that's been it. There hasn't really been the normal crowd in the stands. Go for it and do your thing.
You mean Isaac Tislaw's not going to be the number 1 receiver this year?
Pete, keep your mouth shut. No, I wasn't going to bring up Isaac, but you just did. Wait till Packer fans get a load of number 18 because he's going to light you up. Okay. But anyway, so he is actually going to play a lot. He's going to play a lot more than people thought. I mean, they took Tim Patrick and shipped him to Jacksonville, and that was Brad Holmes's project last year. They loved him, and they're making room for number 18. But I digress. I think penalties, the Lions were sloppy in the preseason. And again, they played an extra game. They had the Hall of Fame game, tons of penalties. It was a lot of the 3rd and 4th stringers, but does that carry over? Are guys going to be sharp and not hold and not grab? And if it turns into a flag heavy game and the Packers get some field position and they're at home with the crowd, it's like the Lions have to play a cleaner game than they've shown, at least during this preseason. I think that's a key. And I mentioned before about the middle of that, the interior of that defensive line. If a guy like Tyreek Williams is a little bit overwhelmed in his first game, there's not depth there, and guys like O'Connor and others come in and struggle. Will Jack Campbell come up from that middle linebacker spot and make some big tackles, some big plays to bring some guys down short of the sticks? He has been hyped up as a guy that is ready to make that next step and might have to in a game like this. So what are you looking at?
Well, I mean, aside from the turnovers, I think for this, it's protecting Jordan Love. And even when the Lions in the first half, remember the first half in Detroit when it was like guys, the average fan had never even heard of getting pressures up the middle when they're having to pull guys off the street and they're still able to win. Like Elton Jenkins gets beat one-on-one by a backup to the backup defensive lineman. And it's just sort of like that kind of stuff can happen. If you're the Packers, it has to. If you can protect Jordan Love in a game like this, I think there will be opportunities, especially in the middle of the field. Those linebackers, I think that there's some opportunities there. That's where they got Detroit last year, and I think Tucker Kraft can be a big part of all of that. You mentioned the penalties. Both of these teams were in the upper half last year in penalties, so the Packers in the preseason penalties were a big problem as well. Now Anthony Belton, I think, had 5 in one of the games. He's not going to play, you hope. So, maybe they can mitigate that a little bit just by having your regular guys out there. But you mentioned it, the Packers didn't have all their guys in a lot of these games either. Jordan Love was hurt for 2 weeks and did not get reps with Matthew Golden, did not get reps with Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed dealing with a foot injury that was reported as a Jones fracture. I don't think was a Jones fracture. That doesn't make any sense to me. 3 weeks, you can't be out 3 weeks with a Jones fracture. That's a 3-month injury. So, and we don't really have good information on that. So I feel like for the Packers to win, protect Jordan Love, win the turnover battle, and they'll win. You hope Micah Parsons is the catalyst for that, to create a turnover or two. And I think that could be enough.
Can we get a Quay Walker unnecessary roughness call or unsportsmanlike?
I'd rather not. I mean, you might.
There's usually one of those every few weeks.
Well, guys, we got remember too. Like guys are tired. Like your football shape versus football shape, right? Like this is now. Training camp is one thing. Now at a game, and guys are tired, and it's not going to be really hot. Like this is not in Miami. That's those early games down in the South can be brutal. It's supposed to be a pleasant day. Like you're going to get a nice day, but yeah, guys are going to be tired. And that's when mental mistakes happen. That's when you blow an assignment. That's when you slip and miss a tackle. That's when you have the ball go right through your hands and into the waiting arms of a defender. You have to be the team. And that's, again, one of the annoying things about a Dan Campbell team is you're going to make more mistakes than them probably, because that's just the way that they operate, unless it's Brian Branch or Kirby Joseph with a tackle below someone's knees.
Oh, here we go. That was the Branch ejection was stupid last year. I'll give you the Kirby Joseph low hit 2 years ago. I'll give you that. Look at your face. You come on.
If you're not watching on YouTube, I don't know. You're missing out. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I thought penalty, but an ejection, ridiculous. So we can.
Well, okay. Even if I agree with you, I think they do in general. They need to start kicking these guys out for dangerous hits. I think that's the only way you're going to get that stuff out. And everyone said, Matt, you can't officiate away the dangerous hits. Guess what? They proved that you can, because they started throwing guys out and they started making it a 15-yard penalty for some of these things. And guess what? Guys stopped doing it. They are special athletes when it comes to these things. They can make this work. That's why it's frustrating when you see guys not taking care of each other. I think that's just one of those things. Look, I'm not going to come on here and call Kirby Joseph a dirty player. That's what the NFL players are saying. I don't have to say that. So
look, and I'll make a statement. I have said that he got screwed out of the Pro Bowl last year and never really said that. You're right. There are plenty of players around the league, including Matthew Stafford, who was mic'd up saying it during the playoff game last year that he was a dirty player. So that reputation carries, but dude got paid. He's the highest paid safety in the league, and he was all pro. He's a damn good player.
He has Xavier McKinney to thank, at least in part, for that. Xavier McKinney up the ante, then Antoine Winfield up the ante on him. Kyle Hamilton, Kirby Joseph. That safety market is exploding. All right, Matt, give me your prediction.
All right, so here's what I was going to do. I was going to pick Green Bay prior to the Parsons signing. I'm going to play a little weird game with you. I just figured they're at home. Lions have won their 3 years in a row. The Lions went 20 some odd years without winning there.
They sure
there
did.
Or Milwaukee for that matter. And then now they've won 3 in a row. Aren't they kind of just due to lose? But now I think this underdog role that the Lions have.
Oh, no.
I'm telling you, all the national pundits are like, I'm on the Packer bandwagon. Green Bay's going to win the division. Now they got Parsons.
Right.
Oh,
Dan Campbell's
going to
eat that up.
I had Ross Tucker on my show picking Green Bay.
I hate that you're right about that part of it. Narrative part.
I'm playing the Dan Campbell fire him up card, which he claims he's not going to do. But I know.
Come on. Of course he's going to do it.
Now you have to. I mean, I don't know if he's, going to play a bunch of video clips that they'll put together of certain, Chris Broussard, but hey, I think a Jake Bates late field goal wins.
Games from some footage from any game in the early 2000s or late 90s. Maybe that's what he'll do. But I'm Packers winning 38-13 all the time, right. And then that'll be enough.
No, I'm going 21-20 on a Bates field goal. Maybe not the gun, but pretty late in the game. I think there are going to be some sloppy moments.
See, I wanted one of those like 2011 Packers Saints 38-35 kind of games. I just don't think early in the season it's fair to expect either of these offenses to be humming at that level. I think what we're going to get is a back and forth game. I think this is going to be haymakers. I think this is going to be the Lions trying to give the Packers their best shot. But what I think early season games often come down to is who needs it more. And I think the Packers need it more. As you said, they have been the little brother of the Dan Campbell Detroit Lions, which is just a wild for people. You and I are old enough to remember that that has like not ever happened in our lifetime until now. And so I think Matt LaFleur is sick and tired of losing to Dan Campbell. I think this Packers team is sick and tired of losing to this Detroit Lions team. And I think they come out and play a confident, inspired, and focused. I've seen a focus in this team, Matt, that I have not seen over the last 2 years. I think they got a little bit humbled last year. They expected to come in and I think just walk through the league, and they did not bring the level of detail and focus to the big games that they needed to. I think they learned their lesson. They got Micah Parsons. I think I have 27-21. So very similar Lions score. I think the Packers get one extra score to push them over the top. And maybe it is a last second. I said, wouldn't it be fun? I had Bob Sturm on my show from Dallas. He said, Micah Parsons can be the best closer in the NFL. Wouldn't it be fun? The Packers needed one stop to beat the Lions last year to give Jordan Love a shot to win it in Detroit. Couldn't get it. They get the one stop at the end of this game to give Jordan Love the chance. He goes down the field, wins it. It's Micah Parsons. It's Jordan Love. That's the proof of concept for the Packers Super Bowl. That sounds good to me.
I'm not going to disagree with you on who needs it, because what if, and I said this to Trey Wingo on the show yesterday, I mean, what if the Lions won again there? Is that a statement and a giant balloon burster for the Packers to go, we lost to them again?
Traded for Micah Parsons and lost to them again. It would be a devastating loss. And I think that's why in these games,
week one, Pete, you still got to play 16 more, but still, I think this is
just psychologically, it would be tough. Like they're coming out going, we couldn't play well in big games last year. We know we're good. It would be a confidence blow to have that's why I think it just, sometimes the games are just that simple. Who needs it more? And the answer to me unequivocally is the Packers.
Matt is great. You can find him over at Locked On Lions. Peter's great. You can find him over at Locked On Packers, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, number 1 overall pick Cam Ward makes his debut in Denver against the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix entering year 2. Two really young electric quarterbacks facing off head-to-head. Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans and Sarah Bedinger of Locked On Broncos. They get you ready for game time.
How will week 1 be won? By the Denver Broncos or the Tennessee Titans? We're going to break down our keys to victory here on today's Crossover Thursday edition. Locked On Broncos, Locked On Titans. And once again, just want to say thank you to all of you that make us your first listen of the day every single day. You know that we'll have you covered over there, Locked On Broncos. For all you Broncos fans, you know that Tyler's going to have you covered, not just with the Titans, but tons of NFL coverage all throughout the season. You do amazing work, Tyler. So appreciate all that you do, and thankful that we get to start off the season together here. And I know you and I kind of touched on this before, but I think the running game is going to be key in this game for both teams. But I want to hear from you. How do you think this game is going to be won if the Titans are going to get the job done?
Simple answer: turnovers. So some stats, and maybe you can contextualize this, but just as somebody on the outside going through looking at the Broncos last year, which, you know, it's a new season, but that's all we can go off of right now. The Broncos were 0-4 in games that they lost the turnover battle. They were 3-7 in games that they tied or lost the turnover battle. So even tying in the turnover battle, just not winning, the Broncos were 3-7. Like, that is, to me, that is an obvious one. If the Titans go in there as a turnover-heavy team from last year that didn't get a lot of turnovers, that had a terrible turnover margin, and they go in there and they cough up the ball to the Broncos, they're going to get blown out, period. Now, if the Titans were to win or at least tie the turnover battle, they at least statistically give themselves a shot. So when you have a rookie quarterback, a great defense, a new offensive line, Titans special teams group was terrible last year, and they go out and get Bones Fossil, so hopefully that's improved. But if the Titans go out there and they lose the turnover battle on the road against a better team on paper, there is zero chance that they're going to win that game. So the Titans must, at minimum, if they don't win the turnover battle, they simply can't lose the turnover battle if they expect to have a shot.
Well, what's interesting about the numbers that you just posed there, as in terms of being 3-7 when the Broncos either tied or lost the turnover battle, is that obviously stealing extra possessions helps a team throughout the course of a season, but also along with that, I mean, the Broncos were among the worst teams in the league last year at, getting 3 and outs offensively. So they had the benefits of, I suppose, a talented rookie quarterback, along with all the struggles that come along with that in terms of there were games that Bo did turn the ball over, namely weeks 1 and 2, and then a couple of other games where the Broncos managed to win. But also the offensive operation was just not efficient enough on the whole that they could really win a lot of games without stealing those extra possessions, if that makes sense. I know it does, but it's just it's one of those things that you just like, okay, you look back at last year, you see a top 10 scoring team, top 10 offense in terms of points scored. And you see a team that had a rookie quarterback that was 2 touchdowns behind the all-time record for touchdown passes by a rookie. And it was great. It was awesome. But yes, it did require the defense to come through, leading the NFL in sacks, forcing a lot of turnovers, being dominant week in, week out, creating those extra possessions. So yeah, you're right. 100%. If this Broncos team gets in trouble in the turnover department, they are going to be in trouble in this game. I think another major key to victory in this game, and maybe the biggest key for the Denver Broncos, is going to be creating long fields and also making life miserable for Cam Ward. I mean, special teams, you mentioned it, how important it's going to be. Maybe the special teams is getting a necessary highlight in this game, because the Broncos have a rookie punter who stunk in the preseason. Jeremy Crawshaw was not good, concerning everybody. If the Titans are getting short fields, I mean, that's anybody can move the ball 10, 15 yards and get a field goal here and there and just continue to kind of chip away. So the Broncos need to make sure that they are flipping field position and giving Cam Ward long fields and making his life miserable in that way.
And Sayer, let's be honest, as guys who, know some football, have played, have covered, we know that when you're the lesser team on paper, when you have less talent, you have to win on the margins. You have to make plays on special teams and flip fields and give yourself easier situations. You have to get turnovers and stuff like that. So whether it be the Titans' perspective of saying, hey, we got to win on some of these not so obvious things to people, not offense, not defense, some of these not so obvious things, we got to win on those to give ourselves a chance. And for the Broncos, it's like, if we make stupid mistakes and beat ourselves, then we're going to give a team that we're better than a chance to beat us. You know what I mean? This is just classic special teams, turnovers, penalties, like especially early in week 1. Anybody could get on here and say these things, but week 1 specifically, most teams are not going to be in a great spot and fully functional and playing clean football. So those mental mistakes, a lot of the times early in the year, people say week 1 overreactions and stuff, like week 1's a liar. Okay, well, what I would say is the reason for that is because even the good teams are still just starting out and aren't quite as clean. And then as the season goes on, the bad teams don't get any better at that stuff, and the good teams do get better, and that's the separator. Football is all about not beating yourself. So special teams, turnovers, penalties, honestly, those are the things that could get the Titans back into the games if the Broncos just play dumb football, honestly.
100%. It's the little things. And, Sean Payton had a pretty funny quote earlier in the preseason. It had nothing to do with the game, but he's like, I got a list of 14 things that ticked me off, and it was everything from the sound system, all these sorts of different things. So the little things really matter.
Do they have bad hotel stuff too? Like the hotel
stuff. Yep,
yeah,
it was right outside of a concert or something like that. He just he's like, why are we booking hotels when there's a concert over here? He's the guy is I guess in many ways he's kind of a mastermind of things. But I think when you look at this game overall, Tyler, I know that you and I kind of joked around about this before the show, but I'm always on board with the Broncos. They're 17-0 until they ain't, and then I guess somebody always comments 20-0 until they ain't. But where are you at with this game? I know this is going to be obviously a fun opportunity to see a rookie quarterback, but what are you expecting in terms of game prediction here?
Yeah, I'm going to enjoy just having football back like we talked about at the beginning of the show. Regardless, I'm not going to go in being like, oh, but you know what, Sayer, as a Titans fan, I found even when I feel like that going into games, they find a way to do something really stupid and kind of rip me out of that calm mindset. Like, oh my God, if you could just be normal. But I'll be honest, I'm not going to do my score right now, but I do think the Broncos find a way to win the game. There's just so many historical things going against the Titans here. Number one, the Titans were 3-14 last year. So let's just start with they aren't a very good roster. Number two, Cam Ward is a rookie quarterback making their first start. And although the Titans found a way to blow that opportunity against Caleb Williams last year, because the Titans always find a way, the odds are that a rookie quarterback in his first start on the road is not going to win. Like, that's a historically bad percentage if you look at NFL history. So not only are those things going against the Titans, they're the worst team on paper, rookie starting quarterback week one, you're on the road, and Broncos fans know the Broncos are historically incredible in the first month of the season because guys' bodies are not ready to play in that elevation. And then a great fan base with a loud crowd and a hostile environment. So many things that I just listed, like 4 or 5 things that are just like red alarms banging off. So I would love for the Titans to come out and get a win. And if they do, you want to talk overreactions. People are going to start freaking out, about the Titans and how good they could be if they knock off a playoff team on the road week one. But I can't have the Titans winning this one. I'll go with the Broncos. Even if I think, the Titans will get some wins later in the year. They'll be better this year. I just don't think that this is an environment where they can prove that.
Yeah, they may not be necessarily the second coming of the Jaden Daniels-led Commanders this year, but I do think they're a better team than a lot of people are expecting. They've got
be
a good
the Panthers.
I
want them to be the Panthers of last year. You play some good games down the stretch. You almost beat the Chiefs and almost beat the Eagles. Bryce Young looked like, okay, he got better. He's the answer. I want a nice 5-12 with some good competitive football at the end of the year. That would be good for me.
100%. I think that's great, and I think that would be an awesome step for Cam Ward to prove that he's the franchise QB. That's what we want to see from the Titans this year. So for Broncos country, they just don't want to see that in week one. They want to see him a little bit miserable in week one, and I think I agree with you in terms of the prediction on the game. I think Broncos win this game. At least I hope that's the case. Every single week I hope that's the case. But at the same time, for the reasons that you mentioned, it feels like a right prediction potentially here. Right. We'll see what happens in week one. Broncos country, we always like to kind of we don't want to count the chickens before they hatch all the time. There'll be a time where we're maybe feeling a little bit more zealous about these teams as the season goes along, like Tyler mentioned.
Check out Tyler over at Locked On Titans. You can check out Sarah over at Locked On Broncos, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Texans and the Rams, 2 division winners from last year that have high expectations, but might not be able to deliver on them if certain factors go the other way. The Texans right now are dealing with an injury to Joe Mixon, and obviously CJ Stroud had a rough sophomore season. And for the Rams, Matthew Stafford has been dealing with a back injury, should be full go in week one, but will that linger? Those are the questions these two teams have to answer. John Hickman of Locked On Texans, as well as Doug McCain of Locked On Rams, they talk about those storylines and a lot more.
And welcome back to this crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On Texans. All right, John, here in our third segment, before we get to our predictions, just want to let you know, my grandparents lived in Sugar Land, Texas for a long, long time. So as a kid, I would go to Houston, and you know about the Dodgers-Astros thing, right? There's a lot of bad blood there. We won't get into the weeds on it. There you go. But when I was a baby, I visited my grandparents, and they took me to like a JCPenney or Sears. You used to take those pictures back in the day. And I have a full-blown baby picture of me in the Astros jersey, hat, jersey, like the whole nine. Come on. I would get canceled by Dodgers Nation if they would see me in this Astros gear. So my grandparents have been using it to blackmail me for years, but just want to let you know that that's how it goes down.
Little friendly wager here. Let's say that the Texans win this game. Can we see that photo? Can we?
Okay, how about this, John? How about I'll just send it to you, right? But with a I need like a signature that you can't send this out to anyone, because I'm telling you, Dodgers fans would use that against me. Like, it would just be criminal. People would think it'd be like AI or something, John. All right, let's get into our predictions because it's week one. Hope springs eternal for your team. I think the Rams at home, with the year they have. I mean, you talk about this Texans team, all these young pieces, this future. It feels like a successful season for the Texans, winning a couple playoff games, taking a big step forward, right? I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, that feels like it would be a successful season. For the Rams, knowing this could be the last year of Matthew Stafford, and if it's not the last year, the next year most likely will be. If you don't win a Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl, they're going to internally consider it a failure. So for the Rams, I think you need to come out week one, win week 1 because last 2 years you started 1-4 last year, 3-6 the year before that. A strong start, I think, is pivotal for this team. And I think week 1, Sean McVay's gone 6-2 in week 1s. I got the Rams winning this one in week 1. But what say you, John?
I have so initially I had the Houston Texans losing this game, but then the back issues of Matthew Stafford started to become a little bit more relevant in my decision making. Again, I'm a big fan of Matthew Stafford. I think he is an old guard quarterback, something that I don't think a lot of people appreciate anymore, which is a problem for me personally. We got to get back to how those quarterbacks were developed and now how these quarterbacks are being developed. But I say all that to say, I think the Houston Texans are going to create the right amount of pressure to get after Matthew Stafford, to get him on the ground, to get some of those errant throws, and to get those balls into the hands of some of their playmakers on the back end of their defense. And not to mention that linebacker group with a healthy Christian Harris who'll be playing Azeez Al-Shire, who's a team captain. Those guys can hit, they can fly, they can cover sideline to sideline. So I'm going to go against my original prediction, and I'm going to go Houston in this game. I got 2 scores that I can see happening, 21-17, 24-21. But I don't think this will be a high-scoring game. I think both teams will be led by their defense to create plays, and offense just have to work with a short field to put up points.
I love that. I think it's a solid score. I mean, wow, what a big surprise. Rams guy picks Rams, Texans guy picks Texans in week 1. What do you know? I got Rams 24-17, but I do think that it could be closer than that. I mean, I wouldn't be absolutely shocked if the Texans came in and won this game because of all the points that you did make. And let's be honest, too. Week 1 lies, right? It's tough to truly assess what a
you
team
guys
looks
didn't
like
play in
week
the
1.
preseason. They didn't put the starters out there in the preseason, so kind of hard to game plan for that. Week 1 does lie.
And it's going to be exciting. I'm telling you, this could be the matchup that ends up being the best game in week 1 because I think these teams are evenly matched. There's a lot of star power. Both teams have pretty solid familiarity with each other. It could be a little chess match. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great game, and we'll see CJ. I don't want to see CJ Stroud like doing this back at, that's my worst CJ Stroud. Okay, that's my worst CJ Stroud. I want to see like Kyron doing that, right? But we know he's going to be back home, Rancho Cucamonga native. I'm sure he'll have a lot of friends and family there, but it's going to be a good one, and it's good for all football fans because football is officially back.
Be sure you go check out John over at Locked On Texans and Doug over at Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Rounding out the 4 p.m. slate, we got the San Francisco 49ers and Seattle Seahawks facing off in an NFC West showdown. The 49ers hoping to bounce back after a pretty injury-riddled and disappointing year in 2024. And the Seahawks with second-year coach Mike McDonald, he will have first-time Seahawks quarterback Sam Darnold at the helm. So Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks and Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers get you ready for game time.
Welcome back to Crossover Thursday, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On 49ers. I'm Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. He's Brian Peacock, Locked On 49ers. Seattle and San Francisco rekindling one of the nastiest rivalries in the NFL in week 1. Right out of the gate, we go to Lumen Field, and 49ers fans expected to flock in droves to the stadium. We'll see if that 53% number that's being thrown out there is legitimate or not. I've got sources telling me it's not, but we will see when we get to the stadium on Sunday. There's a lot of anticipation for this game. And hearing from 49ers fans, there's a lot more excitement this year just because of the unknown. I think from Seattle's perspective offensively that you can say that as well. And game 1 is always a crapshoot, but it feels like more so than ever. On one hand, this with all the new pieces, it does feel like it's more of a crapshoot and just more of an unknown than we would have. And yet, both teams are running similar offenses. Robert Saleh has been in Seattle before. I mean, there's some carryover there that might mitigate some of that too. It's just a really fascinating week 1 matchup.
A lot of familiarity, but a lot of unknowns. You know, there's really a delineation in Sam Darnold's career too. It was like his time before Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco and his time after, and he's looked like a completely different guy since he came to the San Francisco 49ers. And I expect to see a really good Sam Darnold out there. I don't know how you feel about Geno Smith versus Sam Darnold, if it's an upgrade or a downgrade. I think it's close enough, and I think there's probably a good opportunity for there to be a better team around, especially up front around Sam Darnold, which will make the results better for the Seahawks this year, even if he's not as good of a quarterback as Geno Smith. But I do think that Sam Darnold can play, and yeah, the styles, and they both want to be tough football teams. They both want to be rugged on the defensive side of the ball. They both want to run the ball, and we'll see if they're able to do it. And for the 49ers, one of the biggest keys, if you're talking about keys to victory, is starting fast. And they need to start fast this season with some of these unknowns. And they need to start fast, I think, in this game and make sure that they're not playing from behind on the road early. So that's got to be my number one, not only key for this game, but just key for the first quarter of the season for the 49ers is, can they start fast and not be a team that, you know, if we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like, they better know what it's going to look like, right? And if they're a little bit unsure, then that might be a bad sign for how the 49ers season is going to go this year.
Yeah, I'm going to get more specific here. I think they need to start fast in the red zone because I feel like that is really what held this team back last year. And I know a lot of fans wanted to point at Geno Smith because he led the league in red zone interceptions. I've made this argument for months. Number of those picks were not his fault. It was really poor route distribution and spacing, and that's why Ryan Grubb is down at Alabama. That's one of the reasons that he's there. Their offense was not an NFL-style offense. It put Geno Smith in a really hard position, and they couldn't run the ball in the red zone either. They are going to be able to run the football, and if they struggle early, they're not going to give up on it. They're going to continue to run the football. They've now got the fullback incorporated in Clint Kubiak's offense. Robbie Oots, all 275 pounds of him, ready to go lead block. It's going to be a different identity, but I want to see this team when they get to the red zone finish. You can't leave points on the board against any team, but especially the 49ers. That has been one of their Achilles heels. I can't tell you how many times that they've gotten into the red zone at Lumen Field in the last 4 years when they've been playing the 49ers, and they have not gotten points, let alone a touchdown. They've not gotten points. You have got to finish drives at minimum with field goals, but they got to find a way to turn it into touchdowns. And then on the other side, they've got to be able to hold the 49ers to field goals. And I think that was the big difference in that game they had in Santa Clara last year. They were able to get some of those stops when the 49ers had moved the football and forced them into field goal situations. So I look at the red zone and more so than other games. In this matchup, I think it's key for the Seahawks. And the other thing that I'm going to mention, sorry, Plaxico Burress, but I'm going to continue using this. Do not Plaxico yourself in this game. Seattle at Lumen Field. I don't know what it has been. I'm thinking it was 3 years ago that they had some momentum at the end of the half, and then Travis Homer fumbled on a kick return. And then the 49ers scored a touchdown right before the half. And then all that momentum was gone. It seems like every time that these two teams have played at Lumen Field the last 4 years, there's just some nightmarish play or two that turns into points instantly, or it's a broken coverage or thing. They can't beat themselves by shooting themselves in the foot. And they've done that way too much in these home games where the 49ers are good enough to beat you without those. You don't need to give them gifts. And so Mike McDonald, I think, is going to be going to this game. He's going to be preaching that. I know it's week one. Mistakes are going to be made, but at the same time, like, dude, we can't go out there and give up free points and give up key field position to these guys and expect to win. So that's going to be critical, playing clean football and not giving up points off turnovers, sloppy ones, especially like they've had on special teams pretty much every time these teams play the last 4 years.
One more quick note, and I know we're running out of time here, but just that Mike McDonald defense and how it's come together for him in year two. And I think there's a big opportunity for the Seahawks to be really good on that side of the football. So I think we kind of know what to expect from the 49ers offense. A lot of holdover players, that Seattle Seahawks defense, and, you know, some multiple looks. And I can't wait to see how it all comes together. You got Reed and you got Williams and you got Murphy in the middle. And you mentioned the linebackers earlier, but, you know, I'm looking at the PFF grades right now, and a lot of highly graded players in the secondary, obviously led by Witherspoon there. So that's going to be the good on good. That's going to be a lot of fun with that Niners offense against the Seattle Seahawks defense, even if there are some unknowns when the other units are out there on the field. And does that Seahawks defense start to look like, you know, something that was built in the Ravens image and is a powerhouse unit potentially in the NFL?
Yeah, that's going to be what's so exciting to see from this team, just because you just don't see continuity like that very often with 13 of your top 14 guys coming back, and then you add talent on top of it. And I can't wait to see what Nick Eamon-Wari looks like. That is going to be my week one curiosity. I want to see how Seattle's going to deploy him. How different does it look than what we've seen in training camp practices when Mike McDonald doesn't have to be guarded anymore? Is he not going to throw everything out there because it's only week one? Like, I'm very fascinated about that. Let's get to the predictions now, because look, when these teams get together recently, there haven't been as many close games. And a lot of it has been because the Seahawks, again, they have made so many self-inflicted mistakes that have blown up and turned into points. Like that Homer fumble, Seattle was within 7 points, and then suddenly that was a 10 to 14 point swing right before half. And things like that have happened pretty much every time they've been at Lumen Field. I feel like this is going to be, just because of all the uncertainty on both teams, I feel like this is going to be one of those weird week one games that maybe isn't pretty a lot of the time, but ends up being a close game that has a wild finish. So I think Seattle, I think Seattle with their defense having the continuity they have, I think Seattle escapes with the win. But this might be a game where playing in week one benefits them, because I do think San Francisco's got a lot of young guys by second part of the season could really be hitting their stride. I can see San Francisco absolutely winning if their run game is rolling. I think Seattle ekes this one out 27-23.
I was actually a little bit surprised the 49ers on the road were favored by, I think it was a field goal. And for those listeners that might have listened to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show this week, this game was part of our 6-pack, and we made some predictions. You said that it might come down to special teams. Jake Moody's going to be a big factor in this game. I have a feeling for the 49ers. And I don't think the Niners are going to be a team you want to play in December. And this season is going to be bookended by Niners Seahawks, by the way. We get that rivalry uniform game in week 18, and they won't see each other for 17 weeks in between, which is going to be really interesting. And I don't want to see the Niners, I don't think, in December or early January, but this is the right time, I think, to catch the 49ers in a little bit of a transitional phase. And I predict some weirdness on special teams as well as being part of it. And I think I'm going to go Seahawks by 3, even though I know my listeners aren't going to like it.
Oh, boy. Well, the Seahawks, both of us picking them. So not the first time. There's been times I picked the 49ers to win this matchup as well. But I think this is going to be one of the more intriguing games, not just because of the rivalry history, but I think both these teams could be really good this year. I really do. I could also see a case where both teams don't make the playoffs potentially, because this is just such a wide open division. And we're going to learn quite a bit about both these teams in this opener, which is going to say a lot about the NFC West and where things may be heading in this division. It should be a fun one.
Check out Corbin at Locked On Seahawks and Brian over at Locked On 49ers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We have a slate of primetime previews you do not want to miss on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. So coming up, we'll talk about which teams will come out on top and a lot more. This show was brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Ravens, Keon Martin, he delivered in a big way over the course of the entire preseason. Undrafted rookie, didn't even sign with the Ravens initially out of the draft. He signed during rookie minicamp, and he delivered over and over again. Pick six, run stops, even special teams plays. He stepped up when it counted, and when the pressure was on, Keon Martin came through. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week in the preseason, that performance was not a fluke. Keon Martin was certainly on a streak this preseason. And just like Keon Martin delivered for the Ravens, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You can save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. It's the Ultimate NFL pregame show. We return with a splash, as we have two primetime games that are going to be absolutely unbelievable. Starting off with the Sunday night action between the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. It's a divisional round rematch. Both these teams looking to start fast at 1-0, but of course the Ravens falling short in Buffalo last season. There are some charged up emotions. So Joe Marino of Locked On Bills and myself, Kevin Oestreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens. Joe and I take you through everything you need to know as we lead up to a very important game.
Joe Marino, Locked On Bills, Kevin Oestreicher, Locked On Ravens. It is time to discuss the path to victory, what these teams need to do to win. And so, Kevin, as we get into this, I think the number one thing for the Bills, and I'm sure you're going to agree with this from the Ravens side of things, don't commit the back-breaking turnover. And look, these are two special offenses last year, and being highly prolific and not turning over the football. These teams were top 3 and lowest turnover rate per drive in the National Football League last year. But when you look at the head-to-head battles between the Bills and the Ravens, it has always come down to which team makes the back-breaking turnover. Go back to the playoff game. Of course, the Ravens had their share of back-breaking turnovers, and some of those unforced. Go back to the Week 4 matchup. That was a blowout. The Ravens controlled that game, but if you remember, there was the trick play that the Bills ran. Kyle Van Noy had the strip sack, and I don't know that the Bills were going to come back, but it felt like they had a little momentum. That ended any hope that the Bills were going to be competitive in that game. Go back to the 2022 win that the Bills had over Baltimore. The Lamar Jackson interception to Jordan Poyer in the end zone. That was the backbreaker, right? The 2020 playoff game, the pick 6 for Taron Johnson on Lamar. It's always been the team that wins over the last 4. Which team doesn't make that back-breaking turnover? I think it's going to be important. It's week 1, right? You're talking 2 alpha quarterbacks, some of the best players in the National Football League. They probably want to go out there and prove something, right? Well, to me, it's going to be about which player can prove to play smart football and not give it away. Don't make that back-breaking turnover.
Yeah, you can't do it. And I know that for the Ravens and what happened in the playoffs, obviously 3 turnovers compared to none for the Bills. And obviously that was one of the big reasons why the Ravens lost in that game is Buffalo protected the football, didn't give Baltimore opportunities. And meanwhile, Baltimore did the exact opposite. And still, I mean, at this point, for me, you look at what the Ravens did last year and even the Bills too. We talked a little bit about the red zone percentage for both teams. Something I'm looking at in particular, third down conversions. The Ravens last season, they were the number 3 third down offense in the NFL. Buffalo was number 7. So 2 top 10 third down offenses. And you want to go back to the playoff game. I know it's a new season, but I just want to, for context, the Ravens went 7 of 10 on third down. The Bills went 5 of 11. So good numbers for both teams. I think, Joe, and this goes for both quarterbacks, the most important thing, and honestly, the best thing you can do to limit the Ravens or the Bills offense, if you're the Ravens or the Bills defense, is just take the ball out of the star quarterback's hands. Force 3 and outs, get them off the field, and eat up clock yourself. I think that, to me, I don't want to call it like whoever wins the time possession battle wins the game, because clearly that doesn't always happen. But, if you go on a couple of long drives, if you're the Bills or the Ravens, if Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen doesn't have the ball in their hands, well, they can't do anything from the sideline.
Yeah, you normally hear other teams talk about that when they're playing the Bills or the Ravens, but they're playing each other, right? And so you're going to do crossover Thursdays with with the Bengals people, the Browns. They're going to say things like, keep the ball in Lamar's hands. Okay, sure, that's easier said than done, but that's part of that script. And now you're doing it against another elite quarterback. It's a fun dynamic. I told you that Bills are 29th in third down defense last year. So that's going to be a tall order for Buffalo here in week 1. My next thing that I want to get into from the Bills side of things in terms of what they need to do to win the game, this is going to sound really basic, but I'm going somewhere. You need to make Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson be special. We know they can be, right? They've proven that. Well, Derrick Henry's the best running back in the NFL over the last 10 years for my money. Lamar Jackson's every bit of a top 3 quarterback in the NFL over the last 6 years or whatever it's been. These guys are awesome. Like I said already, 30 points per game, most yards per pass last year, most yards per run last year. And I go back to these matchups, like go back to that week 4 route that the Ravens had. Derrick Henry house call, like the first play of the game. With all due respect to Derrick Henry, 100 other running backs would have scored on that play because the Bills didn't get lined up. They wham blocked. There was a huge crease, and Derrick Henry was off to the races. If he has an 80-yard run or whatever it is, fine. He's Derrick Henry. Have some resistance. You can't give up that play. Lamar Jackson is capable of making any throw in the world. He's unbelievable. But it can't be easy for him. You have to do things to try to get these guys out of rhythm. And if they're going to light you up, which we know they can do, make it be because they did something special, not because you didn't line up, not because you had a coverage buster. You just weren't fundamentally sound. It's early in the season. Fundamentals matter the most. You have to make Lamar and Derrick Henry be special. They can do it, but don't make it easy for them.
It's a good point. And I think for the Ravens on the opposite side of that, it's kind of similar, but a little bit different in terms of kind of like you got to make the Bills offense one-dimensional if you are the Ravens. Now, that's a lot easier said than done because Josh Allen can be both the throwing offense and the running offense if they do shut down a guy like James Cook, and you still have that dual threat ability. And honestly, that goes for both offenses. But, to me, I think shutting down James Cook and essentially, like, look, Josh Allen can beat you, right? If you say, hey, Josh, go out there, throw the ball, beat us. Yeah, you can do that, right? But you don't want to make it so that you're guessing. You want to kind of narrow it down to having the least amount of possibilities possible. And I think that if you can take James Cook out of the equation, and we know that Baltimore's run defense last year was absolutely exceptional. They dominated in that facet. They were the number one rushing defense, giving up just 3.6 yards per carry over the course of the regular season. It was really the pass defense that lagged behind for the first part of the season. And then that obviously ended up coming into shape once they benched Marcus Williams. Eddie Jackson was like that whole situation happened. But stopping James Cook early, not letting him get into a rhythm and saying, hey, can Josh Allen, Josh Palmer, can they establish a connection early, right? The two Joshes. Can Khalil Shakir, assuming that he plays in this game, I know it's still a little bit up in the air right now. Is that right, Joe? It's still
he's full practice on Wednesday. I think he's good.
All right. So it looks like he's good to go. So can Khalil Shakir step up? And obviously we know he can find soft spots in the defense. I'd rather have the Ravens, if they were to lose this game, I'd rather have them lose knowing that they eliminated part of the Bills' game plan and not just being thrown all over the field on, which again, Jair Alexander being limited on Wednesday will hopefully be good for his availability. But I think, everybody talks about Josh Allen and stopping Josh Allen. I would rather stop James Cook and say, hey, Josh, go beat us. And if he does, you live with that because we know how good of a quarterback Josh and obviously Lamar Jackson is too.
The last thing that I had down for keys for the Bills is to offensively involve the running backs in the passing game. The Ravens last year, they conceded the most passing yards in the league to running backs. They gave up a lot of production to inline tight ends as well, actually third most yards per game to inline targets. And so the Bills have three good pass catching backs in James Cook, Ty Johnson, and Ray Davis. And Dalton Kincaid, there's a lot of expectations for him as a first-round pick at tight end. They do have Dawson Knox as well. This needs to be a big part of the Bills' recipe offensively. And look, I'm sure the Ravens are obviously aware of the metrics I just said. They've probably been working hard on trying to fix those things, but prove that they have. And obviously I think that'd be an important strategy for Buffalo to get the running backs and tight ends involved in the passing game.
Yeah, and that's a good one. And honestly, for Baltimore, it's kind of the same thing where Derrick Henry, he is most in, like we saw in that 80-yard run, which again, great blocking from the Ravens, great setup. But the further he gets in on a play, the more he goes down the field, the harder he is to stop. He's like a train engine, just
business decisions, Kevin. That's what's going on out there. Those DBs don't want to tackle him. Come on,
look.
Now.
If I was out there, I'd also make a business decision. So I don't blame any of these guys for going out there and doing it. But the running backs, Justice Hill, they love to send him on wheel routes from the Ravens side of things here. Keaton Mitchell is back. We might see a couple of Keaton Mitchell plays in this game with his electricity. But as I mentioned earlier in the show, this game also, I think, could come down to special teams with obviously a rookie kicker making his debut in a stadium that's very hard to play in. And now he's going there in September, not in January. So obviously it's a little bit different, but even still, tough place to play. And you obviously look at the return situation for Baltimore. They drafted LeJonte Wester in the 6th round out of Colorado, who had a couple of really nice returns, including a touchdown on a punt return. The Ravens special teams unit has been kind of in the middle over the last couple of seasons and in coverage units and return ability. So getting off to a fast start there, I think, is going to be really important.
The Bills have given up a special teams touchdown 3 of the last 4 week ones. So
wow,
there you go. You're on it. I think special teams could matter. The Bills are nervous about special teams as well. They fired their special teams coordinator. Chris Tabor steps in. Questions about, Tyler Bass has had pelvic area soreness. He's barely kicked this offseason. Got a new punter in Brad Robbins, who was a disaster for the Bengals in 2023. Didn't kick last year. So there's some special teams questions for Buffalo as well.
You can find Joe at Locked On Bills, and you can find me at Locked On Ravens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Then we get to the Monday night matchup, the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. Again, that NFC North division is slated to be one of the best in football. The Vikings, they put technical second-year guy J.J. McCarthy at the helm at quarterback, considering he missed all of his rookie season with an injury. Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick from last year, will hope to build off of some momentum that he saw during his rookie season. So Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings and Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears dive into everything you need to know.
So as we wrap up our crossover Thursday, Locked On Vikings, Locked On Bears podcast, I want to thank all of you for making Locked On Bears or Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. It's time to get into some keys to victory. And Luke, we've talked around it a little bit here with obviously the Ben Johnson versus Brian Flores offense defense matchup is going to be critical, but we haven't talked as much about Dennis Allen versus O'Connell and the Bears. Dennis Allen being a defense that we're going to see a lot more man coverage than past Bears defense. Doesn't mean it's going to be all man coverage all the time, but corners on an island and getting a little bit more aggressive up front, I think is going to be part of the approach towards they want to stop Aaron Jones for sure and put as much pressure on JJ McCarthy to have to carry the load. And I think it's going to be more of an aggressive defensive game plan as a result. That with injuries at corner, I'm still a little bit hesitant how well that's going to go as far as totally shutting things down.
Yeah, so last time Kevin O'Connell found Dennis Allen, it was in 2023, and he stunted on him with Josh Dobbs, and TJ Hawkinson got like 3 touchdowns. So maybe this is a Hawkinson game. If you're going to do a lot of like 1 double 18 kind of stuff, if that's going to be the deal with Dennis Allen, if he's going to try to man cover double Justin Jefferson. I think back to, and I know this was Eberflus and it was different, but last year, the first game against in Soldier Field, the way that the Bears covered Justin Jefferson was ultimately, it was successful for most of the game, and then it became the reason they lost it. Where they basically did cover 3, but they locked off Justin Jefferson with Jalen Johnson. They just said, that's our matchup, and we're going to kind of play cover 3 outside of it. And it led to a spacing issue that led to like one of the biggest completions in the game. It was in overtime that like set up the game-winning field goal. And so I think about, trying ideas like that, where you're like, we're going to do zone. We're going to, we're going to try to play a normal defense, but we have one guy for Justin Jefferson, and he's going to be the dude. So one of the keys to me is, what can the Bears get out of Jalen Johnson? I know he's hurt. Is he going to play? Is he going to be at 100%? Is he going to be healthy enough for Dennis Allen to say, okay, you've got 18, good luck. And then who else is on the roster that's going to be able to man up with TJ Hawkinson? Whatever you get out of Adam Thielen, we're not quite sure, right? Because he's only been in the building for like a week. And even somebody like Jalen Naylor, who is a lesser receiver, but he's very fast, so he's going to be able to take the top off of things. What are the matchups in that secondary that do that? Or is it going to be, well, we're just going to blitz you all day and kind of hope the rookie falls apart, or the second-year quarterback? I got to stop saying rookie.
Well, that's the interesting thing, is like either one of those strategies feels like it's going to be a really different looking Chicago Bears defense, right? I mean, like whether they're gonna try and just really lock down Justin Jefferson in that way, or what's that guy do? It's still gonna be like a little bit of shell shock in terms of what we're used to from multiple previous defensive coaching schemes at Chicago being a little bit more zone heavy. And I see this as a really critical area, because certainly if Jalen Johnson doesn't play, then you're going to see Tyreek Stevenson start opposite of probably Nashawn Wright, who is a former 3rd-round pick for the Cowboys. The Bears signed this offseason.
Oh my, we cut him last year.
He had some rough moments in the preseason, but he
got traded for Andrew Booth and then didn't make the team. Wait, he's starting?
If Jalen Johnson doesn't go, Nashawn Wright.
Okay.
Because Terrell Smith ended up on injured reserve.
Okay, I misheard you. I was about to go crazy.
It's possible that the wrinkle that we haven't seen yet. I think at some point this season, Kyler Gordon will play outside cornerback in base and then nickel then slot in nickel. And so we could see that as week 1. If Jalen Johnson's not out there, you just say, we just need better cornerbacks on the field. So I have no intel to say that's what they're going to do. I just think at some point this season, they'll find that to be probably their best approach there. And Kyler Gordon's one of the real like X factors in this game, because Dennis Allen is going to use him a little bit like Tyrann Mathieu. Like he's going to play the slot. He's going to rotate back to safety. He's going to be on the outside sometimes. He's going to be all over this Chicago Bears defense, and we have not seen that deployed yet. That's one of the big hidden secret weapons of this defense that gets talked about, but haven't really seen it fully unveiled. And I don't think they're going to, put it all out there week 1 against the Vikings, but I think that's one of the ways they'll try and trip up JJ McCarthy is by moving these guys around a little bit more, both up front, but then also Kyler Gordon specifically in the secondary. Line up in all sorts of spots where you're like, where is number 6? We got to find him on the play because he's good blitzing the quarterback. He's good against the run, and he's a pretty darn good coverage player. And I think he's supposed to be what can make up for some deficiencies where they've got injuries elsewhere.
It's almost like a Josh Metellus role, which is the Vikings have had that player that's that Swiss Army knife that does everything. He's a safety, listed as a safety, but he plays plenty of nickel, he played a bunch of linebacker last year. Like, he goes everywhere. And what Dennis Allen can do for the Bears it's like an underrated Bears storyline because everyone is just wondering, how is this Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams thing going to work out? But I think up in the trenches, a key for the Bears is going to be, you got to find a way to stop Jonathan Grenard. He is going to be huge. And you have to do that without sacrificing your ability to handle Jonathan Allen on the inside or Andrew Van Ginkel or, just various blitz stuff. Blake Cashman's a great pass rusher as a linebacker. Like, you have to stop Jonathan Grenard without sacrificing your ability to actually handle all that other stuff. Like, there's not only a schematic challenge, there's that matchup challenge. And the Bears have to figure out a way to do it. And there's not really a way to do it that doesn't ask Caleb Williams to make the right decision at the right point in the play about how to deal with pressure. That, to me, is the biggest key to how well the Bears can move the ball. And on the Vikings side, I think it's the trenches again. It's, do they get Christian Darrisaw, who, by the way, Kevin O'Connell said there's a good possibility that he plays, but wouldn't 100% commit to it. He's been working back from the ACL, MCL tear he suffered last year. He practiced a lot in camp. I would be pretty surprised if they had him do that much work and then sat him for a real game. But, hey, he got a bunch of reps at practice today, and then they're going to see how he feels in the morning. So we'll see what that is, and you'll see the injury reports when they come out officially. But how do the Bears up front generate wins against a similarly retooled O-line? This is one of the similarities you and I talked about before the show. The Bears redid their whole interior. So did the Vikings. They have 3 completely new players on the interior, and then the 2 bookend tackles that they feel really, really, really good about. How do the Bears generate pressure against that? And can they do it often enough to get JJ McCarthy rattled in his first ever NFL start under the Monday Night Lights?
Yeah, I find myself more concerned about that side of the trenches than the other. Like, I'm more concerned about how the Bears are going to generate a pass rush than how they're going to account for Brian Flores' blitz, just because I think I trust the talent on offense a little bit more and Ben Johnson a little bit more to, they'll come up with some kind of solutions. But defensive line, there's just not besides Montez Sweat, there's not an edge threat that I'm really confident in. And so we know Dennis Allen is going to put a lot of emphasis on winning on that interior. We've yet to see Grady Jarrett all preseason or training camp. So I think that they're kind of resting their hopes on he's got to be back to high level Grady Jarrett, and Javon Dexter's got to take another step. And they're going to be so deep on the interior that they can really push the pocket up the middle and then make Montez Sweat and Dio Dangbo's job easier. But I think they're going to need to blitz more. I think they're going to need to stunt more. I think you're going to see, boss fronts and other ways that they can kind of manipulate the opposing blocking scheme to try and just create better matchups and sim pressures here, because it's just sitting back and rushing 4 is not going to be something that seems very fruitful for this current Bears defensive line.
Yeah. And the thing is, then you need to hold up on the back end against a pretty talented group of pass catchers. The one thing about this, I was thinking about this earlier with Grady Jarrett, because he's such a, what are you going to get out of him? But sometimes the wily old guy, even though he's not physically the guy he was, 5 years ago, when he comes up against the rookie in his first start, can kind of Mr. Miyagi it and kind of say you could probably outrun me, outlift me, outjump me, but I got this trick you've never seen before because I've been in the NFL for 12 years. And that could be what happens on the, that's something I'm going to keep an eye on with Donovan Jackson, left guard, first rounder, first NFL start. It could get a wily vet that kind of knows how to handle a dude that's still just trying to get used to the speed of the game. And that's another matchup. I know we kind of done this whole thing in matchups, but the matchups are the key here.
Yeah, I think there's a hope for some Akeem Hicks energy from Grady Jarrett to kind of
don't give me that name. He should have been a Viking someday. I wanted him to be an old washed up Viking so bad. I wanted him to do what Jonathan Allen did so bad. because he like tweeted once that he liked the Vikings like in an offseason where he was maybe going to be a free agent. And I'm like, please, didn't happen.
Well, quickly as we wrap up here, prediction for the game. What do you sort of see this one playing out?
You know, I think so. The FanDuel line has been 1.5 for a long time. Both money lines are minus odds, so it's a pretty even thing. But with the Vikings still favored on the road, I think that's appropriate. I think the 1.5 point line, it shouldn't be a 3 point or a 7 point line. They shouldn't be heavily favored. But I think leaning it a little bit toward the Vikings is appropriate, just with the levels of talent and the sort of comparison of what is new, what isn't, and how much we need to trust a coach and quarterback relationship, and like what's proven about Kevin O'Connell versus what isn't about Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. I think that is appropriate. I hate doing the score predictions, so I will just say I think the 1.5 line will be close.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially week one. Like we don't know what either of these teams are going to be, and what we see in week one isn't usually representative of the rest of the year either. I find myself, this is neck and neck for me. I mean, if I had to put a number on it, something like 21-20 Vikings is kind of where I lean there. I just think
right around there, something like that.
Right around there, where it's like it's close, and and neither team clearly dominates the other, but I think Minnesota might just have a little bit more in the tank. It would be a little bit more, and they've all had this coaching staff longer, right? They're a little bit more put together, even though it's a rookie first time starting quarterback. Like I think they'll be a little bit more of a well-oiled machine than the Bears are here.
Be sure to check out Luke over at Locked On Vikings and Lauren over at Locked On Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all we have for you here today on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. So good to be back. So glad that football is back. And of course, be sure to check in with all of the local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network for everything that you need to know. We'll be back here soon on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. So stay tuned for everything that's in store, and I will see you later.